Chapter 1661. This was not a good memory. If he could escape, Tainzi planned to directly delete this experience from his memory. This made Tainzi recall some bad things in the past. He remembered that he was framed by his junior sister. After leaving the mountain, he had spent a long time in Jianghu. The ups and downs in his life were really hard to tell to outsiders. Once, because he couldn't win against an enemy, his cultivation was sealed, and he became a miner in the enemy's mine. That was probably what he was like now, tied by a rope, and then led like a slave at the back of the group. This group of people didn't take the initiative to ask Tainzi anything. There is only one kind of communication between Tainzi and this group of people. Okay, you take a few steps forward. A deadly voice came, and Tainzi couldn't help but shudder. A similar conversation happened not long ago, and then he couldn't help but take a few steps forward. God knows what he experienced in those few steps. He actually became Tainji. That's right, Tainji, without a chicken, and with the smell of an old woman, the horror of this broken place. Even the black soul body couldn't resist. Tainji was desperate at that time, and felt that no matter which black soul envoy came, it would be the same. It was the same even if Taisetsu came. This place was really dangerous. Then, Tainji was pulled back by a pillar god who was looking after him. Fortunately, after leaving, he returned to his original state, but there was an indelible shadow in his heart. Obviously, the body of Tainji with the smell of an old woman was not very good. And this was just the first time, and the time before that, and the time before that. Since coming here, Tainzi had experienced several strange things. Again, we don't mind putting you back in the crater. Anyway, it's not that far away. Life is precious, and freedom can also be thrown away. Tainzi weighed for a few seconds, and then walked out with no love for life. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. 13 steps in a row. Nothing happened. Tainzi heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and said, "It seems that everything is fine now. Come over." However, when he saw that the group of people did not move, Tainzi's heart trembled. He said in a trembling voice, "Well, what's wrong with me?" He was panicking now, really panicking. He hurriedly held onto the wig on his head. This was his only dignity. "I'm fine." The leader, Ra the sun god, shook his head. "You're lucky this time. This trap seems to be an ineffective trap. Nothing happened. Keep going." Could it be that he had done it once? Tainzi looked at his feet in disbelief and almost burst into tears. But at this moment, a golden hammer with a diameter of 10 meters suddenly fell from above his head. Bang! As the giant hammer fell, the pillar god who was in charge of Tainzi reacted quickly and hurriedly pulled him back. The giant hammer just missed him and smashed down. Tainzi's face was pale as he looked at the hammer that was emitting golden light. His expression was naturally ugly. He was going to die. He was really going to die. "How about you send me back to the volcano?" Tainzi discussed. The pillar gods did not care at all. They were only discussing the appearance of the hammer this time. Goddess Mat sighed and said, "The land of Fall is indeed extremely dangerous. There are all kinds of strange traps. I feel that when this hammer smashes down, it seems to be able to shock the mind and cause the mind to lose focus. I'm afraid that even the divine shield won't be able to block it." Ra, the sun god, said with a serious expression, "This map has already marked many new traps, but there are still some flaws. Luckily, Matt suggested that we save this person at the mouth of the volcano, or else they were the gods of an ancient civilization. Although there were not many subworlds that unified the legends, they were still gods above the masses. Some of the traps were not just for lying down. Those were purely disgusting." Ra the sun god calmed himself down and said, "Let's continue on our way. We'll soon reach the place where I buried the mother tree. That place can't be left. If I didn't get a key by chance, it would still be a place that no one has stepped into." The so-called divine artifact of the void was completely a matter of luck. In this place where the rules were chaotic, even if the divinity was destiny, the gods of luck were useless. Everyone's starting line was the same. The so-called luck in this place was calculated in a completely different way. Ra, the sun god, did have the intention to get another divine artifact of the void here, but he did not have much hope. They had lost too much in Subworld 002. If they could get some replenishment in the Land of Fall this time, they would have already met their expectations. Coming to the Land of Fall was just a temporary act of helplessness. After some gains here, Sun God Ra would still bring the Pillar Gods to other places. In the Dimensional Crevice, there were powerful beings who formed groups to play games, but there were actually quite a few lone wolves. Therefore, there were also marketplaces in the void that provided mutual exchanges. As for returning to one's own divine kingdom and recuperating in the divine kingdom, it did not exist. The divine kingdom was long gone, and this divine clan had always been poor. Even the god of Sun Ra himself couldn't understand why his lineage had always been so poor. Even when he was fighting with others and fighting fiercely, his divinity would inexplicably fall from his body and then be picked up by the enemy. Therefore, the hundreds of strands of divinity used to buy the map were not voluntarily pulled out by him, but they fell by themselves. He would pick up one after another and then swallow it back. Occasionally, he would save some as backup funds. Therefore, he was really poor. Very poor. Poor. After that, Tainzi stepped on a few more landmines, but he was still healthy. His tenacious vitality made this group of poor pillar gods could not help but be amazed. They all felt that this old man with the afro was really weak. Maybe he had some power, but compared to the standard of being able to walk in the dimensional crevice, he was really too far away. Even those newly promoted ones could not compare to this guy. How did he come to the Land of Fall? Luck? You don't say. Although Tianzi had been successfully stepping on traps, he had never encountered any fatal danger. He was always scared, but not in danger. Then, he arrived at his destination. It was a huge stone door standing on the wasteland. The wasteland was quite wide with a radius of tens of kilometers. It was easy to see if there was anyone who saw it. This huge stone door was standing here and could not be hidden. In front of the stone door, there were many traces of activity, but at this time, except for the pillar gods, there was no one else. Except for the key in my hand, no one can open this door. Ra, the sun god, said with some pride at this time. The discovery of the stone door even alarmed a powerful creature that had existed since the beginning of the new era. It directly cleared the place, studied here for a long time, and finally gave up and left. Tainzi felt that since this group of guys had arrived at their destination, he might have a chance to be free, but after hearing this, his face suddenly turned black. Only the key could enter, that is to say, there was no mark in this stone door at all. The map was useless, and he had to continue stepping on traps. With the map mark, he had suffered a lot along the way, but without the map. After a while, the stone door opened, and Tainzi walked directly into the stone door with a sneer on his face. The pillar gods could not help but be a little surprised. I have my dignity too, Tainzi thought silently, and he always felt like kneeling down. But at this time, a figure flashed, and almost without any pause, instantly took the rope tied to Tainzi from the hands of the pillar god who was holding the rope, and then rushed into the stone door. Damn it! Ra the sun god was shocked. He was very careful, but he did not expect to be followed on this trip. When did it start? Was it after entering the Land of Fall, or on the way? He did not have the time to think about this. Land of Fall had all kinds of strange traps, and the powerful life forms walking in the dimensional crevice had all kinds of strange abilities. This was the result of countless different civilizations. He could not lose the important Bloodline Mother Tree, which was the capital that Ra, the sun god, planned to use to go to the next void market to replenish. If not, would he continue to lose divinity? What was the difference between this and selling blood to support the family? Chase, you must not let it succeed, Ra the sun god said angrily. I'm so poor. If the god's kingdom was still here, there would be hundreds and thousands of subordinate gods directly stationed here. Who would dare to do anything? So poor. After the white light flashed, Tainzi only felt that his body was moving at high speed, and then he stopped and stood on a mountain peak. The sky was blue, and there were clouds and mist everywhere. It looked like the main god mountain that he built. This made Tianzi almost think that he was dreaming of the main god mountain, and he suddenly shivered. But soon he felt bad. He saw a charming woman looking at him with a smile. From a human's point of view, she was about 26 or 27 years old. Her clothes were not considered revealing, but she was wearing a kimono. The cleavage on her chest was a little deeper, and there was a cleavage. It was just that Tianzi was not interested in women at all. He liked to play with power, so he tirelessly planned to become the Black Soul King of the shop. But Tianzi was too familiar with the smile of the woman in the kimono. When Yu Sanyang became his master's pendant, she often had this smile on her face, and then he was expelled from the sect. The black-hearted maid of the shop also occasionally showed such a smile, and then he would be hung from the ceiling. "Thank you for saving me, Mississippi." Tianzi calmed himself down. Even though he was still tied up, he tried his best to put on a sage-like appearance. "I'm really grateful." "I am," the woman in the kimono said with a chuckle. "You are with those guys who call themselves immortals of the immortal path." Tianzi shook his head. "I just came here, and I haven't met anyone of the same kind. Unfortunately, I was framed by thieves and fell to this point. If you didn't save me, I would be terrified. I have no way to repay you for saving my life and giving me a new life. I can only set up a longevity plate for you and pray for you sooner or later." "Hey, do you know why I saved you?" the woman in the kimono said with a smile. "Please enlighten me, Mississippi." Tianzi bowed again. The woman in the kimono said, "I followed those people outside all the way and saw you constantly stepping on traps, but you didn't get hurt along the way. I think you're quite lucky. Do you know who is the most popular person in the land of the fallen? People like you who are lucky and weak are the most popular. I want to explore the space behind this door, so I need you to lead the way for me." "Heh, women, jackals of the same tribe." Tianzi's face turned ugly. He was lucky? If he was lucky, would he have to suffer all these? What kind of luck was this? That's one thing. At this time, the kimono woman said, "On the other hand, you were introduced by that heartless Musashi, so I will naturally take good care of you. On this journey, if you don't die, when I finish plundering, I will naturally let you go. Even if you die here, I will be responsible for burying your body. Don't worry, Musashi only broke my heart 3,000 years ago. I am a very magnanimous person, and I don't remember it anymore." So this woman in the kimono was in the same group as that burly man from the beginning? Tianzi's eyes turned black. How many people had this Master Musashi offended in the land of the fallen? At this moment, a loud sound came. The woman in the kimono's face changed slightly. She directly picked up Tianzi and shot into the depths of the clouds. Obviously, the pillar gods were chasing after her in anger. "Don't go." Above the blue sky, a blazing sun was born, instantly evaporating the clouds and mist in the mountains, revealing a large expanse of beautiful scenery. The woman in the kimono wasn't afraid. She waved her hand, and a dark shadow came up, covering the sky and the sun, temporarily covering the blazing sun. The heat of the blazing sun in the sky suddenly increased, breaking the shadow, but R.A. had already lost sight of the woman in the kimono again. She was furious, and the mountain suddenly burned because of this god's anger. But at this moment, a terrifying red light suddenly shot down from the sky, instantly piercing through the blazing sun. R.A. was shocked. She saw a huge black shadow floating in the wind above her head. It was a huge floating island with a radius of 10 kilometers. "Damn!" R.A., the sun god, screamed at this time. He quickly waved away the pillar gods who came forward and shouted, "Follow me." After sun god R.A. finished speaking, he directly led the pillar gods into the mountains. The huge floating island in the sky just quietly floated and floated away. In the depths of the mountains, R.A. restrained his aura and took his daughter and the pillar gods to hide in the hole of an ancient tree, with a lingering fear in his heart. "Father God, that red light just now." Goddess Matt wanted to say something at this time, but she hesitated. It was the first time she saw the great Father God so flustered. On that floating island, there are guards of the secret place. Sun God R.A., took a deep breath and said, "That floating island itself is also a terrifying weapon. You have already seen its power. Why can't I see it? It directly pierced through Father God's blazing sun with one blow. This place has such terrifying guards?" R.A. nodded. "Those guards seem to be some kind of strange life form. They have the ability to regenerate, and they are very powerful. Moreover, there are many of them scattered all over this secret place. Although we don't have to be afraid of one, there are too many of them. We need to be more careful on this trip." Royal Garden. Goddess Mat couldn't help but fall into contemplation. She hadn't been in the dimensional crack for long, and she came to this fallen land, but she had already experienced many dangers. In this place, she suddenly understood that even gods seemed to be only a little stronger than humans. She suddenly wanted to go back to the City of the Sun. It would be great to go back and fool everyone. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1662. The pillar gods hid in the hole of the ancient tree for a moment. When they saw the huge floating island floating away, they slowly walked out. R.A. suddenly said, "The floating island's trajectory is fixed. It's floating in the opposite direction of the mother tree. Our luck is not bad." The pillar gods were slightly relieved. Only R.A., the sun god, had been to this place before. They could only rely on R.A., the sun god, as experience. "Father God, my priesthood was weakened by 90% in this place. I can't even replenish my power. That's how it is in this secret place. Try to save as much energy as you can. I was careless just now, and I ignored the dangers of this place in my anger." R.A. shook his head and calmed himself down. "Come with me. This place is dangerous. After we take the Bloodline Fruit King, we should leave immediately." After making up their mind, the pillar gods began to move again. As for the huge floating island in the sky, it was getting farther and farther away. But at this time, in the crown of a lush tree in the ancient forest, a pair of eyes hidden in the branches and leaves quietly watched the pillar gods leave. Then the leaves swayed, and a figure slid down from the trunk. "Bloodline Fruit King? You know about it." The kimono-dressed woman looked at Teinzi as if she wanted to see through him. This was the information she had just obtained from Teinzi, the purpose of Ra's group. "Those guys didn't hide it, so I heard it," Teinzi said helplessly. The kimono-dressed woman chuckled. "It seems that they don't intend to let you go." "I know." Teinzi shook his head. He already knew this from the beginning. After those guys completed their goal, his situation would be much more dangerous than hanging at the mouth of a volcano. It was just that Ra's group didn't expect that the kimono-dressed woman would suddenly appear and take him away. Musashi's enemies still had the idea of torturing him, but R.A., the Sun God's party, might directly kill him to silence him. "Do you know the location of the Bloodline Mother Tree?" The kimono-dressed woman narrowed her eyes and asked. Here came the important point. "Of course." Teinzi raised his head and said, "Otherwise, wouldn't all the hardships I've suffered along the way be in vain? Those guys treat me as a piece of trash that can be easily bullied. How would they know that I've already found out about their secrets?" In truth, he didn't know. He didn't know anything at all. He had only heard one of the pillar gods mention Bloodline Mother Tree and Bloodline Fruit King. But now, even if he didn't know, he had to say that he knew, and he knew a lot. He was going to make a comeback. All thanks to his deception. Doubt flashed through the kimono woman's eyes. How could a powerful life form walking in the crevices of dimensions be so careless? It was hard to say. Some powerful beings really did have holes in their brains, or perhaps it was their true nature. In fact, everyone had removed the veil covering their shame. They were living like brats, loyal to their hearts. "If you can really find the Bloodline Mother Tree, I can let you go." The kimono woman thought for a while and said, "I can also give you a Bloodline Fruit King. Of course, if you're lying to me. I know of a pool that can freeze souls." Teinzi seemed to have a card up his sleeve. He only had these skills that he could use. He pretended to be polite, his expression didn't change, and he spoke without thinking. But these skills were useless in front of the owner. The owner knew what Black Soul was thinking with just a thought. He had nowhere to hide. "You won't be disappointed." Tianzi chuckled. Miss, since the temporary alliance agreement has been reached, can you let me go? The kimono woman didn't haggle over this matter. She waved her hand and untied the rope on Tianzi's body. Then, she directly put him into her sleeve. This rope was mystical. It could directly imprison Black Soul's body. It belonged to that burly man, but it seemed that the kimono woman wouldn't return it. May I ask your surname? At this moment, Tianzi was waving his hands to make a bow, but this checkered shirt with an afro was really out of place. Tamamonome, the kimono woman said indifferently. I'm Tai Yongjinren. Tianzi smiled and said, coming out to roam the pugilistic world, using a fake name was just an experiment. But Tianzi had heard of Tamamonome's name before. After the white jade token was unsealed, he had a period of time where he was obsessed with the modern world's internet culture. He knew Tamamonome. SSR. Taiyangjiren? Tamamonome frowned and then shook her head. Those immortals like to call themselves Taoists so-and-so. Forget it. Since you know where the bloodline mother tree is, then lead the way. We need to get the thing away before those guys do, so as to avoid trouble. Of course. Tianzi chuckled and waved his hand. A gray fog shot out and turned into a feather fan. He held it in his hand and fanned himself. His appearance changed into a white-robed old Taoist. Tamamonome wasn't surprised by this ability. She just nodded and said, "This looks much more comfortable. Let's go." This way. Tianzi smiled faintly and pointed to a path. Then he walked in front, randomly pointed. On the other side, the pillar gods quickly passed through a few dense forests under the lead of sun god Ra. They met all kinds of mystical beasts along the way, but they didn't encounter any real danger. Strange. Although the beasts here are powerful, I don't know why, but they lack a bit of wildness. They are surprisingly tame. This was the feeling that Goddess Matt had felt several times. They seem to be kept here. One of the pillar gods gave his opinion. All the gods felt the same, and they became more and more vigilant about this place, especially Ra, the sun god. He was an explorer who had experienced the land of the fallen, so he definitely understood how terrifying it was to open up such a huge space in the land of the fallen. Also, that huge stone door was something that even the giants of the new era could stop. He began to have a bad feeling, but he was about to reach the place where the bloodline mother tree was buried. He wasn't willing to give up just like that. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Stop! The moment the voice sounded, sun god Ra's face changed slightly. He looked up and saw 3 silver girls floating in the air. They were really silver. Their skin, faces, and even their hair were all silver. They were exactly the same. The silver girls were even wearing the same uniform. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The pillar gods reacted quickly and instantly locked onto the 3 silver girls with their auras. Wait a moment. Sun god Ra waved his hand at this time, indicating that the pillar gods shouldn't act rashly. At the same time, he raised his arm. In his palm, there was a long diamond-shaped purple crystal. He said in a deep voice, I have permission. This was the key to enter the secret place. At the same time, it also represented a kind of identity. There were several people who fought with Sun God Ra for this key. They came in together, but those guys couldn't get out and died here. The reason was that the key was in his hands. He had seen with his own eyes that these silver girls surrounded and killed those powerful beings. The silver girl in the middle glanced around and nodded. Visitor permission confirmed. You may enter. Please keep quiet in the garden. The forbidden area will be displayed on the key. Please pay attention. The mechanical and emotionless voice sounded. That's enough. Ra, the sun god, heaved a sigh of relief and then gave the pillar gods a look, indicating that they should leave. Visitor authority. This was the authority of the key that he had worked so hard to obtain. With this authority, he had walked very far in this secret place. However, there were still many places that he had not been able to set foot in. These silver girls would only answer some of his unimportant questions and nothing more. Sun God Ra led the pillar gods and was about to leave. But at this time, the silver girls directly pulled out the golden swords at their waists and pointed at Goddess Mat and the others. Stop! Those without permission will be treated as intruders and will be eliminated. What? Sun God Ra was shocked and said with a frown, "They are my family. They are with me. There is only one visitor. One key, one visitor." The silver girl's expressions didn't change. There was no possibility of accommodation. "How can this be?" Sun God Ra frowned again. He took the purple crystal key and said quickly, "We will leave soon. We will never destroy anything here." The silver girl said, "You have already done damage. The Sky Island has stopped you once. If you do it again, you will be treated as an intruder and destroyed." With that, the three silver girls landed at the same time. "Go!" Sun God Ra turned around and shouted loudly. These silver girls were never reasonable and were very rigid. Fortunately, there were only 3 of them here. Sun God Ra calculated in his heart. He had the ability to eat it in the shortest time, then go to the mother tree as fast as possible, pick the fruit, and leave. These silver girls never left the stone gate. If he used his divine power sparingly, he should be able to rush out. But Matt and the other pillar gods, it's just a few guards. One of the pillar gods didn't know the situation at this time. He said angrily, "It seems like they're made puppets. How dare they challenge the divine power?" He used to be in charge of the divine power of war in the divine kingdom. He was full of killing intent and could never be provoked. Wait, Sun God Ra's face changed again. The pillar god in charge of the divine power of war had already made his move. In an instant, he swung his sword. The silver girl's body was directly cut open with a terrible wound. Nothing more than that. The pillar god who made the move shook his head. It was not challenging at all. Even if there were many of these puppets, they would be killed with one sword. Damn it. When the impulsive pillar god made his move, Sun God Ra knew that things had taken a bad direction. He hated it in his heart, but he also knew that this was not the time to reprimand him. "You all leave quickly and wait for me at the entrance. This is an order." "Father God, why are you afraid? These puppets are not strong." The pillar god didn't care. He turned around and looked at the silver girl who was almost cut in half by him. His face couldn't help but change. What? He saw that the silver girl who was cut in half at this time, not only was there no blood-like liquid flowing out of her body, but the damage she suffered was also rapidly healing. In just a few breaths, she had completely recovered. Level 2 warning. In an instant, one silver girl after another rushed into the sky from various parts of the jungle and then gathered. In an instant, there were nearly 50 silver girls. Humph! No matter how many there are, they will still die. The pillar god in charge of the divine power of war was angry and made his move again. He swung his sword across the air, and a powerful energy blade flew out. Among the 50 silver girls in the air, more than a dozen were instantly swept down. But these silver girls who were cut in half, after falling to the ground, they healed again. "You idiot!" Sun God Ra suddenly became furious. "These silver girls are not strong, but they can't be killed. Here, our physical strength will always be consumed and can't be replenished at all." What? The pillar god in charge of the divine power of war instantly understood why Sun God Ra was so panicked. How could there be puppets that couldn't be killed? He had never encountered such a thing. Even after following Sun God Ra for a long time in the dimensional crevice, he had never encountered such a thing. This was unreasonable. "Go quickly. Don't worry about me. I have the authority. They won't attack me." Without hesitation, Goddess Mat instantly grabbed a pillar god next to her and flew back the way they came. The pillar god, who had acted rashly at this time, gritted his teeth and also retreated. "Father God, I was wrong. Please punish me severely after this." Dozens of silver girls at this time waved their swords and chased after him. More silver girls were gathering at this time. Sun God Ra was indeed safe. The silver girls ignored him and flew away from him. Sun God Ra's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. After weighing the pros and cons, he resolutely rushed into the depths of the jungle. At this point, the Bloodline Fruit King must be obtained. He still needed to catch up with his daughters and open a path for them to leave. Stop in front. Pay attention to the key information. Warning 1. Unexpectedly, a silver girl who stayed behind suddenly called out to Sun God Ra. "What?" Sun God Ra frowned. "I clearly could have passed last time. The silver girl who stayed behind said expressionlessly. The third royal garden is entering the 97,313 phase of regular renovation. There is construction ahead. Please take a detour. The third royal garden? Ra, the sun god, subconsciously frowned. This kind of information was never revealed by these silver girls before. Royal? Royal? Where's this country? Sun god Ra's face was uncertain. The path ahead included the place where he hid the mother tree. Should he go or not? Looking at the silhouettes of the silver girls all over the sky, sun god Ra clenched his teeth and made a decision in his heart. What kind of people were the scariest? Poor people were the scariest. Sun god Ra instantly entered the forbidden area. The bloodline fruit king was very useful even for him. His kingdom was long gone, but with the bloodline fruit king's ability, he could find a new him, spread his legend, and create a new kingdom. Then give him money. Visitors' permission revoked. Pursuit. Destroy. Hashtag 3PS. 25 of 82. Chapter 1663. The fleeing pillar gods split into two groups, and not all of them took the same path. The route in the air was too obvious, so Goddess Mat suggested going through the dense forest on the ground. The silver girl was very fast, and she caught up with Goddess Mat in the blink of an eye. The pillar god, who was in charge of the war theocracy of the ancient Egyptian divine kingdom, turned around to block the attack and cut down a dozen silver girls. While these silver girls were beginning to heal, the pillar god pulled Goddess Mat and another pillar god into the forest again. Mat couldn't help but frown. These secret guards are really, as the father god said, they can't be killed. You're really in trouble this time. I know. The pillar god who was in charge of the war theocracy replied casually. Goddess Mat was instantly angry, and she couldn't help but hate her brother's attitude at this time. He had clearly apologized to the father god before leaving, but now he didn't care at all. This brother who was in charge of the war theocracy had always been open and above board. When did he become like this? But you still... What are you doing? Goddess Mat couldn't help but widen her eyes, and her face was full of horror. She, her brother who was in charge of the war theocracy, and another pillar god, a total of 3, were walking through the dense forest on the ground. But at this time, her brother suddenly pierced the chest of the third pillar god with a sword from behind. The pillar god who was attacked sneakily didn't even have time to scream before his body was violently cut open by her brother. Then, he was swallowed by her brother. At the moment of the shocking change, Goddess Mat couldn't help but be furious. What did I do? I just did what I should do. The pillar god who was in charge of the war theocracy had red eyes and a ferocious face. I've had enough of the father god's cowardice. When we came to the void world, we were like rats running across the street. He should be stronger. He should be more ruthless, but he didn't. He doesn't deserve to be the god of the divine system. You will all become my strength. I will gather all the theocracies of the divine system. This is obviously a very good place. Outside, I'm afraid I can't find a chance to do it. My lovely sister. So you were purposely attacking the guards of the secret ground. Goddess Mat had already figured everything out. Unfortunately, it was too late. Her strength was far inferior to her brother's. At this time, her brother had already swallowed a pillar god, and his strength had increased explosively. Mat, become my strength before those guards catch up. Don't worry. I will wait at the exit for Father God to return and tell him that you have all been killed by the guards. Unable to resist, the goddess Mat was instantly pierced in the shoulder by her brother's tremendous godly power. Over the years, she had been sleeping in the city of the sun. After waking up, she had sold the scales of good and evil in exchange for a chance to save the pillar god who had fallen into the subworld number 002. She had just arrived at this dimensional gap and had been running around without any time to improve herself. How could she be the opponent of her brother who was already a veteran? At this moment, she couldn't even resist. Don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame Father God for not being able to create a glorious future for us. Her godly power surged with a ruthless aura, and Goddess Mat instantly felt the approach of death. But at this moment, a silver flash appeared, and in the next moment, her brother who had the absolute upper hand had his head explode. Then the silver flash appeared twice more. Once, her brother's chest was blown open, and once again, her brother's godly power crystal was also blown apart. Bang! His body fell to the ground, right in front of Goddess Matt. It wasn't the attack method of the secret ground guards, but something else. Here, in addition to their pillar gods and the one who took away Taiyinzi, there was someone else, a third party who killed her brother. Goddess Matt looked at her brother's body on the ground, as well as the godly power crystal that was forcibly knocked out, and the godhood that represented the war god's authority that was automatically stripped off after the death of the main body. She couldn't help but be shocked and angry. She looked around nervously, but she didn't know where the guy who launched the sneak attack was hiding. He moved. Suddenly, Goddess Matt saw something moving on the grass in front of her. Suddenly, someone stood up. It was a girl who was wearing grass. Her cheeks were smeared with dark green, and she was carrying a large spear in her hand. From the appearance, it looked like a sniper rifle. Matt knew about sniper rifles. When she was in the City of the Sun, because of Professor Siejadu, she had a detailed understanding of the modern world and modern civilization. But this kind of weapon was actually able to kill her powerful brother in a few shots, which was really unacceptable to Matt. Did I hide it well? The girl walked over with a smile. This thing is called a ghillie suit. I made it myself. It's really because the beasts in this broken place have such a good sense of smell. Without the ghillie suit, I can't improve my diet. She seemed to be talking to herself, but the girl slowly walked over, carrying a sniper rifle that was longer than her height. Who are you? Goddess Matt instantly became vigilant. The girl walked directly to the corpse of the pillar god who was in charge of the divine right of war. She reached out and scooped up the pillar god's divine crystal shards and the quintessence that contained the divine right. Then, she threw them into her mouth and swallowed them. Finally, I saw an outsider, and it's a big sister. The girl narrowed her eyes. Don't worry, I will keep you alive. Come, talk to me. You're not afraid of the guards of the secret place. Goddess Matt's heart moved at this moment. The girl shrugged and said, Did you see them coming? Here, they are very obedient. Indeed, ever since this girl dressed in grass suddenly appeared, those silver-colored girls seemed to have left. Goddess Matt was startled. At the same time, she felt a sharp pain coming from behind. Goddess Matt subconsciously looked down and saw that her copy was pierced by a sharp blade from behind. When she felt the wound instantly become numb, and at the same time, she felt dizzy. This sharp blade was smeared with poison, a poison that could even poison the body of a god. A girl wearing a turf, ghillie suit slowly came to the side of the Goddess Matt and squatted down. The girl blinked, thought for a while, and then directly used her hand to smear some dirt and dust on the delicate face of the goddess. Then, she began to search the goddess' body. The key isn't here, she thought for a while, then raised her head and looked in another direction. The girl suddenly lifted the heavily injured goddess up and jumped into the air. Bloodline Mother Tree, is it really in this direction? Tamamonome looked at Taiyinzi with some suspicion, but when she asked, she didn't see any movement from his body, not even a moment of hesitation. He still looked very confident. Of course. Taiyinzi didn't even turn his head and just casually replied. He couldn't turn his head back because if he did, he wouldn't be able to hide. Although he looked as calm as an old dog, his heart was already panicking. He was just stalling for time, trying to think of a way to escape from Tamamonome. Taiyinzi clearly couldn't think of a particularly effective method. How much longer? Tamamonome asked again, using a smarter way of asking. We'll be there soon. It's just in front. Taiyinzi could only brace himself and say, Where is the turning point? This old Taoist can't hold on any longer. It's really just in front. You didn't lie to me. Yeah. Unexpectedly, Tamamonome suddenly shouted out in surprise, and then directly passed by Taiyinzi, quickly walking forward. In front of her, there was a strange tree that was emitting a red light. Its leaves were half red and half green. Tamamonome had already jumped in front of this strange tree, reaching out to pluck a hanging fruit from the tree. I didn't expect it to really be the blood relation fruit king. Tianzi. Tamamonome turned around and directly threw the fruit in her hand at Tianzi. I promised you this is your share. Tianzi subconsciously caught the fruit in his hand, staring at it. Okay. Tamamonome gestured at this time. The blood relation fruit can't fall to the ground, and the item that can store the item can't be used. So you can only catch it with both hands. Come over, pick more for me. Don't just stand there. Taiyangzhenren? Tianzi's lips moved slightly, and once again looked at the fruit in his hand. F***CK. 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 This time, I'm really in luck. How would he know where the blood relation mother tree was? He was just randomly pointing the way, but it seemed to be a good thing. I'm coming. Holding the fruit in both hands, Tianzi immediately ran in front of Tamamonome, his face full of joy. Why was the mother tree transplanted? Sun God Ra's voice suddenly sounded. This is mine. Don't you dare touch it. Hearing Sun God Ra's voice, Tianzi instantly shuddered. He saw a figure rush out, but looked quite wretched. It was the leader of the group of pillar gods, Sun God Ra. The treasure of the land of Fall will only be found by those who are fated, first come, first served. Tamamonome smiled casually, feeling that today was really a lucky day. Die! Sun God Ra, who looked quite wretched, roared angrily. A huge amount of divine power burned at this moment. Tamamome's expression couldn't help but change slightly, staring at Tianzi and frowning. You provoked a greater divine power? Tianzi? He didn't know what a greater divine power was, but there was no doubt that it was troublesome. This sun god Ra's eruption made him tremble with fear, and his legs went soft. Damn it! Tamamonome gritted her teeth, as if she wanted to do something. Unexpectedly, Ra, the sun god, who had burst out with his divine power, suddenly stopped at this moment. Several silver chains were wrapped around his body at this moment. At this moment, these chains were actually pulling the body of the sun god up by force. Get lost! Sun god Ra, who was already furious, roared at this moment, and an even more powerful divine power began to surge out. But at this moment, from the sky, silver chains shot down one after another. The chains were like poisonous snakes, and in the blink of an eye, they wrapped around Sun God Ra. Under the blockade of these chains, Sun God Ra's huge divine power fluctuations decreased little by little. In the end, this Sun God Ra's body fell down powerlessly. He wanted to struggle, but in the end, even the strength to struggle strangely disappeared. The chains on his body seemed to be able to suppress all of his strength. Tamamonome and Tianzi were both stunned, and then they revealed a shocked expression. They subconsciously looked up and saw that in the sky, there were already many silver girls standing in the sky, and they looked the same. Without saying a word, dozens of silver chains shot out from the palms of these silver girls. This time, the targets of the chains were Tamamonome and Tianzi. Gaia. The moment he saw these silver girls appear, Tianzi shuddered. They were too similar. These silver girls were too similar to the Gaias he had met in the Penglai treasure house. Other than the fact that the material was different, their appearance was similar. Could it be that this place had some special connection with the Penglai treasure house? However, before Tianzi could think about it carefully, the chains had already successfully sealed him. Following Sun God Ra, Tianzi also fell to the ground powerlessly, as if he had been drained of all his strength. Tamamonome did not attack these silver girls, nor did she resist the silver chains. In the moment of danger, she directly disappeared. Then, Tianzi only saw a stream of light flash into the deep forest. It even wrapped around a bloodline fruit king. Some of the silver girls immediately chased after it, but some of them stayed behind. At this time, one of the silver girls walked in front of Tianzi. This old Taoist who had fallen to the ground at this time raised his head with difficulty. They are too similar. Second-class access confirmed. Welcome. It's here. As expected, Tianzi's face was filled with joy at this time. He was very familiar with this kind of plot. He could turn the situation around. But you do not have the visitor's permission. and your secondary permission is not enough to enter the third imperial garden. According to the Empire's civil law, you will be arrested. Announcement complete, beginning execution. Tainzi? Wait, this development is a bit inappropriate. In this way, Tainzi was directly lifted up by 2 silver girls. At the same time, 3 silver girls pulled out their golden sword at the same time and walked to the side of sun god Ra, who could not move. The golden swords were raised and were about to stab down. However, the 3 silver girls suddenly stopped. The golden swords were now hanging in front of sun god Ra's eyes. Third permission confirmed. Criminal temporarily suspended execution. Bring back to Sky Island. Visitor's key has been collected. Return. Chapter 1664. In the darkness. Father God, Father God, Father God, wake up. A slightly weak voice kept ringing in Ra, the sun god. His ears, which made him slowly wake up. After waking up, Ra, the sun god, quickly discovered his current situation. He was wearing a strange kind of shackle on his hands. This kind of shackle not only sealed his divine power, but also suppressed the strength of his body. It had been a long time since he had this kind of feeling. It was like a mortal who was seriously ill, weak to the extreme. It wasn't just him. His daughter, the goddess Mat, was the same at this time, wearing special shackles. And compared to him, his daughter's situation was more serious. You're hurt. On the surface of the bloodstains on her shoulder and abdomen, his daughter's situation was very bad. Ra, the sun god, instantly frowned. This was his most beloved daughter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept the goddess Mat and given her the scales of good and evil. Father God, Mat wanted to say something but stopped. What happened? Ra, the sun god, felt something and frowned. Where are the other pillar gods? Father, listen to me. Goddess Mat took a deep breath at this time, and even changed the way she addressed him. Brother, bit by bit, Mat told Ra, the sun god, what had happened. This master of the entire pantheon, his expression changed from anger to grief, but he didn't say a word until Mat finished narrating this experience. Ra, the sun god, said with a bitter smile, your brother is right. I am too useless. Mat quickly said, Father God, now is not the time to blame yourself. Do you know where we are now? Sun god Ra looked around. It was obviously a cell, but the surrounding walls were transparent. There were many similar rooms, arranged one by one, like the structure of a beehive. But except for the cell they were in, the rest were empty. Where is this? The Sky Island, Goddess Mat said with a serious expression. It's the huge object we saw floating in the sky at the beginning. They call this place Sky Island. According to what you said, the mysterious girl who caught you seems to be able to command the guards of the secret place. Sun god Ra frowned at this time. Is it possible that this mysterious girl is the owner of this secret place? But since she killed your elder brother, why did she leave you behind? There were many things that he couldn't figure out. But suddenly, Ra, the sun god, noticed something and quickly touched his clothes. Then, his expression changed slightly. My key is gone. What? Mat's expression also changed slightly. This was because her godfather had said that this secret place could only be opened with a key. It couldn't be opened from the inside. The surroundings were so quiet that it was almost mysterious. The father and daughter were imprisoned in this huge beehive-like cell, and there was a faint feeling of despair lingering around them. His divine power was sealed, and his strength was constantly being drained. In this place, the gods were no longer gods, but prisoners that could be easily manipulated. If we can escape this disaster, I want to send you back to the city of the sun. Ra, the sun god, seemed to have aged in an instant, and he sat weakly on the floor, looking quite disheartened. He was known as the great divine power. Even in the crevices of the many dimensions of the gods, he was not weak, but he could not climb up. Instead, he met danger again and again, and now he was reduced to a prisoner. How could he not be discouraged? The father and daughter looked at each other without saying anything. In the beehive cell, the father and daughter of the ancient Egyptian god were secretly lamenting and hesitating about the future. On the Sky Island, There was also someone who was worried about his life, Taiyangzi. Oh, Taiyinzi. Unlike the beehive cell where the father and daughter were imprisoned, Taiyinzi was now in a huge, empty room. It was like a rectangular box, and the surrounding walls were almost shiny white. At this time, Taiyinzi was firmly fixed on a standing metal cross. Cold sweat dripped down his body. He shivered and looked at the position directly in front of him, and saw a guy lying on the ground with grass covering his body. From the moment she woke up, Taiyingzi saw this fellow covered in grass lying there. He was about 50 meters away from her. He even saw the guy lying on the ground covered in grass. At this moment, he was holding a strange-looking silver sniper rifle in his hands, and he was aiming at it. A target. In an instant, Taiyinzi fully understood his current situation. Obviously, he had become a target. Bang! Just at the moment he realized that he had become a target, the silver sniper rifle suddenly made a roaring sound. The bullet flew directly over Taiyinzi's head. His hair was gone, as if it was shaved by a razor, and a path was opened in the middle. Taiyinzi suddenly trembled and shouted in horror, "Hero, spare my life. I'm still a beautiful girl. Not a hero. Spare my life." The other party's joking voice came from a distance. Taiyinzi was stunned. Before he had time to speak, the other party had fired again. This time, the bullet still scraped his head, and half of his hair was shaved clean. "I'll die. I'll definitely die." Taiyinzi took a deep breath and struggled desperately. Don't mess around. I tell you, I have a master. My master just needs to stomp and blow." Bang! Okay, Taiyinzi's head was completely clean. The girl wearing a ghillie suit with a face full of camouflage colors coldly said, "Okay, don't talk nonsense. Now, I'll ask you a question, and you answer it. If I feel that your answer is too slow, I'll shoot. Understand?" "Understood. Understood." Taiyinzi quickly nodded. "Who sent you here?" Taiyinzi quickly said, "It's Master Musashi. He sent me here to pick the blood-red fruit." "Master Musashi?" the girl muttered, and then quickly asked again, "Who is Master Musashi?" Master Musashi is a member of the Transcendence Organization, the gatekeeper of the Eternal Night Palace. Taiyinzi also quickly said, "I have some reasons to join the Transcendence Organization. The blood-red fruit is the condition for me to join. Really, I don't have any evil intentions. I just want to pick a fruit. Why do you want to join this organization?" But the girl continued to interrogate him. Taiyinzi stammered, but he couldn't explain. Before he set out, he was forbidden to speak by his master, so he couldn't reveal the real reason. He couldn't even take the initiative to reveal his master's name. I can't say." Taiyinzi's face was bitter. Facing the danger of death, his face was as white as a sheet of paper. "So, you didn't come here to find me?" the girl said coldly. No. Taiyinzi quickly said, "I really came here to pick the fruit, but I was kidnapped on the way, so I came here. I didn't mean to offend you. Miss Fairy, when I don't know each other, there is no enmity between us. You really didn't come here to find me. Why do I suddenly feel very sad and want to find something to vent it? You." Bang, 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 bang. The bullets kept flying past Taiyinzi's neck, cheeks, waist, and even some more private parts. Accompanied by the roar of the silver sniper rifle, Taiyinzi felt as if he had taken a trip to the gates of hell. Finally, the silver sniper rifle's muzzle emitted a trace of hot air, but stopped. Taiyinzi finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, there's still one more shot. Shoot," the girl suddenly said excitedly. Bang, bang. Taiyinzi opened his mouth and was about to curse, but this time the bullet didn't fly past his body, but directly pierced his neck. So the curse instantly turned into a scream. Taiyinzi's head flew out at once, and a trace of gray mist came out of the cut. Then his head rolled all the way on the ground and finally hit the wall on the side. Strictly speaking, the Black Soul Envoy didn't have his so-called organs. Even if only the head was left, he could still live. Taiyinzi was still alive at this moment. Even after his head was cut off, he instantly regained his freedom and ability. So, Taiyinzi's head flew up and instantly turned into a huge, evil spirit's head, flying toward the girl in the ghillie suit to bite. "You ignorant girl, today I will teach you what it is to be dominated by fear." "I'm scared, scared." The girl in the ghillie suit stood up at once, and the huge sniper rifle in her hand was instantly swung like a wooden stick toward the flying evil spirit's head. It was a home run. Tansy hit the wall again. This time, a few of his teeth were broken, and he saw stars. The girl in the ghillie suit jumped over it this time and stepped on Tayenzi's head. The muzzle of the sniper rifle directly pressed against Tayenzi's cheek and pressed down hard. "I was wrong. I was really wrong. Sorry, Hey, Uncle Tayenzi, look who I am." Tayenzi couldn't help but be startled. He subconsciously widened his eyes. The girl in the ghillie suit lifted the turf on her body at this time and touched her face casually. She removed the camouflage graffiti on her face and revealed her original appearance. You. Tayenzi's eyes widened as if they were going to pop out. He stared at the girl's conspicuous short white hair. "And I, Miss Nero." "Hello." "So, Miss Nero, you inexplicably returned to the past era. After inexplicably finishing a job, the main god's battlefield collapsed, the space shattered, and the void original demon invaded. Then you inexplicably fell into the gap between dimensions. When you woke up, you were already in this place, and then you were trapped until now." "Yes." Nero nodded casually. In the center of the huge rectangular white room, there was a barbecue stove at this time. Nero was roasting something on the stove. It seemed to be the meat of an unknown beast. Needless to say, the smell was quite fragrant. "The guards in this lousy place never eat. I can't stand it." Nero sprinkled the unknown spices and said with a smile, "But there are many beasts in this place. When I'm bored, it's quite fun to wear the ghillie suit to hunt. But these guards know it's me, so they don't stop me. I feel so bored, so every time I restrain the aura of the black soul. They can't find out that I have the third-class authority, so they treat me as a poacher. Then they come to catch me, and then I fight back." "Haha, interesting. Tayenzi looked at Nero, who was roasting the meat, with pity. "This child is so pitiful. I've only been trapped in the white jade token for 500 years, but this child doesn't even know how many years she has been trapped in this secret place. I'm afraid she's too sleepy." "Oh, it's done, Uncle Tayenzi. Do you want a skewer?" Nero blinked and said. Tayenzi also blinked, and then his head slowly floated up. "Before that, you're not going to put my head back?" He waved his eyes, indicating that his body was still on the cross platform and hadn't been put down yet. "No." Nero shook her head at this time. "After eating, I have to continue to practice shooting. Uncle Tayenzi, this is my habit now. How about this gun? I found it in the warehouse of the Sky Island. When I first saw it, I fell in love with it. It's thick, hard, and long. I have to hug it to sleep every night, and I can't bear to let it go. Uncle Tayenzi, you really don't want to eat it?" "Oh, give me a skewer," Tayenzi said subconsciously, and then he was stunned. He glared at her and said angrily, "You little brat. In any case, this old Taoist is the first black soul that Master has transformed into. I am still your senior, no matter what. How dare you do this to me, offending me? Aren't you afraid that I'll report you in front of the Master when I go back? Quickly let me go, put on my head, and then serve me well. TSK, I know 36 kinds of plots, 72 kinds of postures, and 108 positions." Nero said with a smile. "The Master is a man." Tayenzi suddenly sneered. "Do you think the black-hearted maid in the shop is invisible? With her here, you're also a woman, so don't even think about being promoted." "I could be a secret lover," Nero said with a smile. "It's good to have an affair, and I can't stop. You really don't plan to let me go?" Tayenzi suddenly frowned. "For the sake of being a fellow disciple, I can pretend that this thing didn't happen." "No." Nero's expression suddenly became cold, and she said expressionlessly, "Anyway, you didn't come to me, so why should I let you go? You are now my captive, and I can kill you." As she said, she took a bite of the barbecue, but after chewing a few mouthfuls, she spat it out. "Bah, it's disgusting." Chapter 1665. He picked up the head on the ground with both hands, then put it on his neck and straightened it. After a while, Tianzi spat out a gray mist and turned it into an afro wig. Then he began to comb it with a comb. People who were used to wearing wigs were like this. They treasured it very much. Nero blinked and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why don't you just turn it into hair?" "What do you know?" Tianzi glanced at this ignorant girl. He didn't even remember that his body was pierced with thousands of holes just now. Tianzi had made up his mind. After this undercover operation was successful, he must report this ignorant wild girl. Nero didn't understand, but she was overjoyed. She simply learned from Tianzi. She blew a mouthful of air and turned it into an afro wig. Then she put on. Needless to say, it was quite stylish. Tianzi's eyes couldn't help but twitch a few times. He felt that a sacred place in his heart that must not be trampled on seemed to be insulted. He took a deep breath and calmed down the discomfort in his heart. He obviously remembered the task ordered by his master. But to enter the Transcendence organization, he needed to complete Musashi's assessment. At this moment, how could he not know that picking the blood fruit was a big trap that Musashi dug for him? If it weren't for the chance to meet Nero in the secret place, there was Sun God Ra in front of him and Tamamonome in the back. Who knew how many enemies of Musashi were lurking around? He would have played a song to cool himself down. But it seemed that the opportunity was also here. Nero, she seemed to have mastered the guards of this secret place. At least, this Sky Island was currently under Nero's control. Those silver girls were obviously under her control too. Third-class authority? Tianzi silently calculated the difference between his authority and Nero's. But he couldn't think of a reason at present, so he could only hide the question in his heart. "Miss Nero, I need some bloodline fruits as a stepping stone to enter the Transcendent organization." At this time, Tianzi sorted out his thoughts and felt that his tone was very good. "This is the task that the master ordered. Now that you have mastered this secret place, I think you can help me get some?" "Miss Nero, we are from the same sect after all. We should help each other. I will never forget today's kindness. If Miss Nero has any request in the future, as long as you say the word, I will do it without hesitation. Even if I have to climb the mountain of swords, go into the pot of oil." At this time, Nero directly moved a huge oil pot. The oil in the pot was boiling. Before he got close, a heat wave had already hit him. Nero pointed at the oil pot and said innocently, "Jump, Uncle Tianzi. I've never seen anyone put into a pot of oil before. Fight." He couldn't beat them, not to mention that those silver girls didn't care about his second-class authority at all. Tianzi gritted his teeth and thought that he would rather suffer a little. As long as he served this witch well, he would have some prospects of joining the Transcendent organization. After completing this undercover mission, humph, I'll endure it. I know Miss Nero is angry in your heart. As long as Miss Nero can calm down, I'll apologize to you on behalf of the master. What's wrong with going into the pot of oil? Tianzi was actually very smart, but he didn't know why he was often muddle-headed. Perhaps it was because of his character, but he was actually very smart. In a short communication, he had already figured out the reason why Nero was angry with Jiaona at this time. She was probably angry with the boss for leaving her here. Besides, this pot of oil looked fierce. During class with the black soul body, what kind of pot of oil could cause harm to him? After going into the pot of oil, he was afraid that it would only make his body greasy. At most, he would cry out in pain after going into the pot of oil, which would make this little witch happy. Tianzi immediately climbed to the edge of the pot of oil and was about to jump in. "Wait a minute," Nero suddenly shouted. "Who told you that I'm angry with the boss? Aren't you?" Tianzi couldn't help but be startled and stared at Nero. Nero shrugged and didn't say anything. After a while, she said indifferently, "Okay, you can jump now. Uncle Tianzi, don't worry, you won't die. Master, now is the time for me to perform meritorious deeds. You must give me extra points." Thinking of this, Tianzi pinched his nose and suddenly looked impassioned. He really jumped into the pot of oil. "Chi, gulu gulu, chi chi, chi chi. What kind of oil is this? The pain is killing me. Ouch! He really jumped." Nero suddenly opened her mouth, Even if I touch some of this oil, it will hurt for a long time. Uncle Tayenzi, you are so fierce. Tayenzi puff. It was impossible to die. At most, it would hurt his soul as if it was being roasted by a raging fire. Tayenzi lay on the ground, looking at the ceiling helplessly. His skin and flesh were exploding, and the black fog on his body was fluctuating between condensing and dispersing. Finally, Nero remembered that Tayenzi was also the boss's subordinate. After Tayenzi exploded to 70%, she took him out of the pot of oil. Sorry, Uncle Tayenzi, I didn't expect you to jump into the pot of oil. Nero squatted next to Tayenzi pitifully at this time, holding a freshly picked, blood-red fruit. In her hands, here, this fruit is for you. Really for me? Tayenzi didn't believe it. He felt that there was a conspiracy here. Nero curled her lips and said, Yes, but there is a condition. Do you agree? Say it first, Nero said with a smile. Uncle Tayenzi, your undercover mission seems to be very fun. Do you need an assistant? What do you think of me? You? Tayenzi suddenly widened his eyes. He even ignored the injuries on his body that was 70% cooked. He suddenly bounced up and said angrily, Okay, it turns out that you have this idea. I should have seen through it long ago. What idea? Nero was startled and looked at Tayenzi with some confusion. Tayenzi sneered. You think I don't know? You're clearly trying to steal my credit. Let me tell you, this mission was personally given to me by the master. No one can even think of snatching it from me. I won't rob it. Nero sat upright at this time. Uncle Tayenzi, I can sign a private agreement with you. I promise I won't take your credit. Really? Tayenzi suddenly frowned. There was no proof, but if Nero really wanted to sign a private agreement, if this agreement was really owed, even if it was brought to the master, he would not be afraid. Of course. Nero nodded vigorously. Speaking of which, Tayenzi was not too familiar with Nero. When the master recruited Nero, he was still engaged in great construction work in the main God Mountain. As for the rest system set by Miss Maid, it was even more heartless. So far, Tayenzi only had a brief impression of Nero. But since this girl was willing to sign an agreement, have you thought it through? Tayenzi hesitated for a moment before asking tentatively. The master didn't say how long this mission will take. I don't know how long I have to lurk. You have been trapped in this secret place for many years. Now there's a chance to go out. Don't you want to go back to the shop? If I go back, I will be punished. If I can go out, why should I go back? Uncle Tayenzi, can I massage your shoulders? Nero ran directly behind Tayenzi at this time, reached out and pinched his shoulders and whispered, How is it? Is this strength appropriate? I'm sorry, Senior Tayenzi. I just thought it through. You are my senior. I shouldn't treat you like that. Besides, if you didn't bring the person who has the key to open here, I don't know how long I'll be trapped here. You are my great benefactor. Uncle Tayenzi, can you forgive me? Tayenzi said lightly without any expression. He was the type of person who could be persuaded by force but not by force. At this moment, Nero was serving him personally. He was so happy in his heart that he almost laughed out loud. Here it comes. This is the treatment that the first Black Soul envoy under the Master should receive. This is what I am pursuing. Senior, what do you want to eat? I will get it for you right away, okay? And you little girl are enlightened. Tayenzi waved his hand at this time. You should have done so long ago. Seeing that you are so sensible, I will reluctantly agree to your request. Really? Nero suddenly became enthusiastic. Tayenzi, he said formally, but I have to say in advance that the agreement has to be signed after all. And, in this operation, you must respect me. You must not do anything beyond my command. Everything must be reported to me. Let me tell you, if you ruin my business, it is equivalent to ruining the master's business. You will be beheaded. Don't worry. Nero showed a sweet smile. I'm the most obedient in front of the boss. Agreement, sign it. Tayenzi waved his hand at this time and condensed an agreement. This thing was naturally different from the boss's sheepskin scroll. There were no irresistible agreement rules, but after all, it was condensed by Black Soul with the power of the shop. It could bind the Black Soul envoys of both sides who signed the agreement to a certain extent. First, After the undercover mission is over, all the credit belongs to Taeyinzi. Second, during the undercover mission, Taeyinzi must be respected. Third, during the undercover mission, any information must be unconditionally shared with Taeyinzi. Okay, look carefully. Look carefully, sign it. Taeyinzi waved his hand, and the agreement was sent directly to Nero. Nero blinked her eyes, stretched out her fingers, and quickly drew on the agreement. Then, she stamped a handprint on it. What are you doing? Taeyinzi's eyes were very sharp. At this time, he clearly saw that Nero had altered the agreement and changed the name of the master to his own. He was shocked and angry and was about to jump up. Then Nero smiled. At the moment when Taeyinzi was furious, she grabbed his palm and pressed it on the agreement. Okay, it's done. Uncle Taeyinzi, when are we going to move? I will tear you apart, you little girl. How dare you bully me? Taeyinzi's eyes were red, and he instantly exploded. Taeyinzi typed, plus Taeyinzi was knocked down by Nero KO. Taeyinzi was dragged out by Nero. Suddenly, footsteps came from the honeycomb cell. Sun God Ra and Goddess Mat raised their heads at the same time and saw a white-haired girl slowly walking down the stairs while gnawing on a yellow fruit, until she came in front of the father and daughter gods. The two sides looked at each other through the transparent wall. Are you the master of this secret place? Sun God Ra had seen the wind and waves after all. At this time, she asked calmly, what is the purpose of capturing us here? Nero didn't speak. She just bit the yellow fruit and clapped her hands twice. Immediately afterward, a group of silver girls flew in from the other side of the honeycomb cell. Behind these silver girls were the other pillar gods who had escaped. These fleeing pillar gods were also shackled that could suppress their divine power and physical strength. At this time, their faces were ashen. When these pillar gods saw Father God who was already in prison, they were even more shocked. After a while, the honeycomb cell opened again, and Tamamonome was brought in by a group of silver girls with an ugly expression. The pillar gods and Tamamonome were directly thrown into the honeycomb cell at this time. At this time, Nero looked at the pillar gods and Tamamonome and said with a smile, this honeycomb cell has a set of special operating rules that change every day. But there is a loophole in it. The first one to find this loophole can break out of prison. The pillar gods were suddenly shocked. Tamamonome frowned. If you succeed in breaking out of prison, I can allow you to take one thing from here. Nero said again, why should we believe you? Goddess Mat said indifferently at this time. Nero tilted her head and showed a big smile, but she didn't say anything. She directly jumped up the stairs and left the honeycomb cell. She seemed to be in a good mood. Miss Nero, do you think the taste of this fruit? I just picked it on the road. I think you're already thirsty. Taeyinzi held a pear-shaped fruit in his hands and walked over with a smile on his face. Wow, Uncle Taeyinzi, you are really a good person. Thank you for your hard work. Nero happily received it. As everyone knows, as a senior, I have the obligation to take care of the younger generation. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. Taeyinzi quickly waved his hand. At this time, he and Nero were standing at the entrance of the secret place. Nero threw out the key found from Sun God Ra and directly opened the huge stone door. This secret place, according to the Silver Girls, is called the Third Royal Garden. I wonder which family is this? Taeyinzi suddenly asked. Some vague information began to appear in his mind. The last time he had this feeling, he successfully wrote a few words for Boss Luo. It seems to be called the Eternal Empire. Nero said casually, it is said to be the garden of the second prince, but there is no record on the Sky Island. Those silver girls are actually the original gardeners of this royal family. They don't know much other than taking care of this garden. Eternal Empire? Taeyinzi frowned. The things in his head seemed to be about to surface at this time, but there was always something missing. It was like being covered with a layer of gauze. He couldn't see the true appearance, which made him very uncomfortable. Second, Prince? Desolation. Nero nodded and said indifferently, his name is Desolation. Apart from that, there is nothing else. Boom! Suddenly, Taeyinzi's head seemed to explode, and then a memory fragment appeared instantly. The second prince, Desolation. the initiator of the root capture plan. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS, as usual. Chapter 1666. Uncle Tainzi, Uncle Tainzi. Nero suddenly shouted continuously. Tainzi looked at Nero in confusion, not understanding why she was so surprised at this time. The secret hidden in his mind had just opened a gap, and now was the time to reap the harvest. But it was suddenly interrupted. He could not help but feel angry. "You're about to collapse." Nero blinked and said, "What?" Tainzi was startled and looked at his body subconsciously. The black soul body had completely separated at this time, and there was no part of his body that was connected. Tainzi suddenly woke up from a dream, and his eyes flashed with horror. The secret in the depths of the memory in his mind was instantly interrupted and became indescribable. Tainzi's black soul body gradually merged again. Just a little more time. Tainzi had a feeling that his black soul body would be completely dispelled, and then what awaited him would be the endless darkness in the Ark of the Covenant. He immediately shuddered, feeling incomparably fearful. At this moment, his mind gradually calmed down, but what followed was waves of piercing pain. He understood in his heart that just now, it was completely similar to an overclocking state, but his weak soul clearly couldn't bear it, and once he stopped, he suffered a backlash. It seemed that the task given by Master was not so easy to complete. This time, because of Nero, he had only uncovered the tip of the iceberg, and his body had almost been broken. Perhaps, when his black soul body evolved again, the next time the secret in the depths of his memory emerged again, he would be able to pry for a longer time. "Are you okay?" Nero saw that Tainzi had stabilized and looked at him carefully. "It's nothing serious." Tainzi shook his head. "Just now, because I suddenly remembered something." Nero thought for a while and said, "About famine." Tainzi shook his head again, and this time his attitude was quite firm, as if he did not want to say more. Nero did not ask carefully. Fighting was fighting. For an old ghost like Tainzi who cherished his life like gold, there might be a time when he was really willing to risk his life. "Well, now that we have the blood relation fruit, how do we go to the Eternal Night Palace?" Nero changed the topic directly. Tainzi took out an item. "This is the coordinates to the Eternal Night Palace. Since we're out, let's head straight to the Eternal Night Palace." "Okay." Nero nodded and walked out of the huge stone door without saying anything more. "By the way, how long have you been trapped here?" Tainzi just wanted to relieve his headache, so he casually found a topic. 55,270,080 hours. Nero turned around at this time and said expressionlessly, "Another 24 minutes. That second just now was the 35th second. Tainzi opened his mouth subconsciously, but this little girl had already walked far away by now. She didn't seem to be overjoyed after escaping, nor did she seem to be in a daze. She only looked around curiously. "So careful. It seems that the resentment is not small." Tainzi sighed and shook his head. "Master, this time, it's too..." At this time, Tainzi suddenly felt an inexplicable fear, as if he stepped on the edge of the cliff. Could it be that I came to the third royal garden because... The fear and panic in his heart gradually became stronger. Tainzi took a deep breath and completely emptied his mind. Then he felt better, but he dared not to figure out anything. It was said that there were still most of the areas in the deep sea that rejected human exploration. In the bottomless seabed, the number of new creatures that humans could find was still increasing every year. Here, it had exceeded the limit of human technological exploration. At the bottom of a huge trench, Boss Luo and Mississippi Maid were strolling. The strange algae that grew at the bottom of this deep-sea trench was emitting green light at this time. Behind the Boss and Mississippi Maid, there was a waterspout that rose to the sky. It was like a pillar that supported this strange place. The humidity was quite strong. If one waved his hand casually, his palm would be wet. Luocchio had arrived at the periphery of the underwater city, recorded in the information left by Lamias for almost 20 minutes. During this time, he had been wandering in this deep-sea trench. He had not met the residents of the underwater city, but he had seen some strange deep-sea creatures. In the deep sea, Even if there was a civilization that was completely independent of the human country, it must have been born with the birth of the human civilization on the land. In theory, the time between them should not be too far apart. Perhaps it was before the human civilization, perhaps it was after the human civilization, because the subworld number 003 had been rebooted many times before the current human civilization existed. The reboot in Araya's script must be the reboot of the whole world. Of course, this alternative civilization in the deep sea would not be left out. Therefore, the underwater city would not be the legacy left by the previous reboot civilization. But it had not been exposed to the human world so far. Even if there were records, it was probably only in the hands of those ancient organizations. For example, Xianyuan Palace, which had been dedicated to resisting the invasion of the deep-sea demons. For example, Black Order, which searched for materials in the deep sea. Therefore, it could be speculated that the civilization of the underwater city also existed in Araya's civilization script this time, but might only exist as a hidden line. Now, all kinds of extraordinary creatures were emerging in human countries all over the world. This should have happened immediately after the Mountai disaster, but because of the existence of the Terminator, it was delayed for several months. Because of the existence of the Terminator, the official reboot of civilization would only truly start after the Terminator. But Araya obviously would not wait until then to act. Based on the current situation, it was probably the idea of gradually opening up and gradually intensifying, making early preparations. And this point clearly did not clash too much with Boss Luo's request. Perhaps even the underwater city would really start to come into contact with human society soon. Luochio suddenly had such a thought, and then shook his head. He knew that when such a thought was inadvertently born, there would soon be some changes. It was hard to say whether it was good or bad. He stopped at the end of the deep-sea trench. There were two gigantic statues that were over 100 meters tall. They stood on the left and right sides of the trench as if they were guards. The statue on the left had the appearance of a human man wearing battle armor, while the statue on the right had the appearance of a strange, non-human creature. It had 4 arms with fins, curved legs, sharp fangs, sharp eyes, and a membrane around its ribs, 3 eyes. It seems that there is indeed an ancient civilization in the abyss of the trench. Miss Maid looked at the statues in amazement. I wonder if the civilization of this underwater city is the same as the marine civilizations of other subworlds. The business of the previous owner seemed not to have reached the civilized world of the abyss of the trench. The reason was unclear. At least, it had not since Miss Maid entered the shop. After the 2 colossal statues, it was the end of the deep-sea trench. There seemed to be no road ahead. At least, there was no road in normal sight. It seems to be a boundary, and the fulcrum is these 2 statues. After a few more glances, Miss Maid understood. There is no fluctuation of world fragments nearby, but the space is a bit unstable. It is presumed to be an artificial subspace, but it is not out of the present world. It seems to be the application of space folding technology. Space folding, many branches. As for the one in front of them, it was probably similar to the technology of overlapping a larger house with a smaller one. Master, do you want to go in now? Boss Luo thought for a while. Then, he thoughtfully looked at the road where he came from. In front of him, a flickering blue light was rushing toward him. Miss Maid reacted quickly. She took a step forward and waved her hand to stop in front of Boss Luo. The blue light in front of them gradually became clear. Boss Luo saw a young man, wearing goggles and holding a 1-meter-long stone spear on a strange vehicle. At this time, the young man showed a panicked look. The vehicle looked like a motorcycle, but it had no wheels. It was grayish-white, like it was made of the shell of some kind of shell-type creature. The blue light was released by this strange vehicle. It seemed to be the light emitted when the drive system was activated. The young man on the strange vehicle was saying something in a panic, a language that was different from all the languages of the current human society. Boss Luo gently squeezed Miss Maid's palm at this time. The young man's panicked words became clear and understandable. In the next second, communication was no longer a problem. Boss time consumption, 10 days. Get out of the way. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! I can't stop! Get out of the way!" The young man shouted in horror at this time. So Boss Luo pulled Miss Maid and walked a few steps to the side. The young man rode his own vehicle and instantly flew past Boss Luo and Miss Maid. After confirming with his eyes, the young man couldn't help but have a trace of doubt in his eyes. Why did he get out of the way? Bang! The vehicle that couldn't stop hit the base of the huge humanoid statue. In an instant, this strange vehicle was smashed into pieces. As for the young man, at this time, he stood up without any serious injury. The strength of his body was a bit unexpected. At this time, the young man was holding his waist with one hand and rubbing his forehead with the other hand, shouting in pain. Suddenly, the young man seemed to remember something. He looked at the road in horror and shouted, "Go! Go! The sea monster tribe is coming. You go quickly!" As he said, the young man with goggles quickly took out a water droplet-shaped crystal about half the size of a palm from his body and stuck it on his forehead, facing the unknown center of the two huge statues. Very quickly, a blue light shot out. Very quickly, a thin layer of light screen appeared at the base of the two huge statues. It was like the surface of the water that had been mixed with alkaline water and was filled with a layer of colorful brilliance. "Come here!" At this time, the young man shouted at Boss Luo and Miss Maid again at this time, looking more and more nervous. "They are coming!" Luochio looked at this time, casually at this time. In the deep sea trench, at this time, a group of strange creatures appeared at this time. They looked similar to the huge, strange creatures at the end of the trench on the right side. The sea monster tribe that the young man mentioned also had 3 eyes, but they didn't have pupils or noses. However, their ears were pointed and long, and their mouths were open to the root of their ears. Their sharp teeth were like steel thorns. At this time, they were salivating and looked extremely hungry. They crawled on all 4s like spiders. They were extremely fast and were about to press forward. Miss Maid saw this and glanced at Boss Luo. "Attack?" Boss Luo shook his head, then walked to the young man who opened the door. "Go in first." Miss Maid didn't care. Master never took the initiative to kill, not to humans, not to the sea monster tribe, and not to humans. That was close. If you were a little slower, those sea monster tribe would definitely eat you. After passing through the colorful film, Boss Luo and Miss Maid came to a cave. It was quite dry. Although the humidity was still high, it was much better than the outside. As for what happened to those sea monster tribe who failed to hunt, the people who were already in the cave couldn't see. The young man with goggles leaned directly against the rock wall at this time, holding his knees with both hands, gasping for breath. After a while, he recovered and looked up at Boss Luo and Miss Maid. "Hey, who are you?" The young man looked curiously at this time, and even approached, raising his head and sniffing hard with his nose. "Why don't you have any smell?" He pointed at Miss Servant Girl. Boss Luo asked curiously, "Smell? What smell?" Miss Maid always had a faint perfume smell on her. The young man frowned and said, "It's the smell of being alive, but everyone's smell is different. I was born to smell these smells. She's so strange. Even the sea monster tribe has a smell, but she doesn't." "Oh, I can't smell you either. What's the matter?" "What's your name?" Boss Luo asked. The young man couldn't help but be startled, saying subconsciously, "Riaz. My name is Riaz." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly opened his mouth in surprise. It wasn't because he had reported his name, but because he had said his name without any vigilance, as if it was only natural. "You grew up here?" Boss Luo asked again. The young man, Riaz, nodded and said, "Yes, I grew up in Lemuria since I was young, and I'm going to be an adult soon." Why is it that no matter what this big brother asks, I always have the urge to answer him immediately? Lemuria. Boss Luo blinked. Underwater city. Who are you? The young man, Riaz, suddenly became vigilant, took 2 steps back, and even raised his 1-meter-long stone spear. "We're lost." Boss Luo smiled. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 1667. Perhaps it was because he was still young, or perhaps it was because he had never seen the sinister side of people, or perhaps it was because of other reasons. Riaz quickly walked in front with a little doubt and led the way for Luaccio and Miss Maid. He also briefly explained some things about Underwater City. For example, the Lemuria civilization was once a powerful civilization with a continent's territory. However, after a natural disaster, the once glorious Lemuria city had no choice but to carry out an immigration plan. As early as when the Lemuria civilization ruled the continent, the outstanding people in their country had mastered a power called magic ability. Through the power of magic ability, the Lemuria civilization created many convenient tools. The transportation tool that Riaz smashed was called Serpent. It was an application of magic ability. In addition to us, have you ever heard of any outsiders entering Undersea City? Boss Luo suddenly asked at this time. Riaz shook his head. I haven't heard of it. If you want to know, I'll go back and ask around for you. According to Riaz, in Underwater City, he was actually just a civilian. The place he lived was East 13th Street, far away from the noble circle. Civilians were not allowed to leave Underwater City without permission. As for Riaz sneaking out of Underwater City this time, it was to find a kind of mineral outside to modify his serpent. The new All-Star Serpent competition will be held soon. Riaz said with some yearning. If I can get a good ranking in the competition, I'll have a chance to leave East 13th Street, enter the palace, and see His Majesty the Emperor. Riaz did not explain the reason. Boss Luo's ability to make people speak was not adjusted to unyielding. After a simple exchange, they finished walking through the long tunnel. In front of them was a huge basin. The towering rock walls around it were like solid city walls, protecting the entire underwater city of about 9 million Lemurians. The number of 9 million was officially calculated, but that was 10 years ago. We're here. This is Underwater City. Riaz stood at the entrance of the cave and looked at the entire underwater city. Welcome to my city. The city was not orderly. Most of the roads were curved. As for the architectural style, it was impossible to find a similar type in modern society. It was like a craftwork created by a variety of strange conches. As for the center of the city, there was a huge white tower that almost surpassed the height of the basin. At the top of the white tower, a light pillar shot out. That was the light that protected Underwater City from being drowned by the sea. It was eternal and indestructible. As for the Imperial Palace, it was under the White Tower. While the Emperor of Undersea City ruled Undersea City, he was also the guardian of the White Tower. For countless years, the Imperial Palace had been protecting the White Tower to prevent the invasion of the Sea Demon tribe. The Siren race was the descendants of the strange creature on the right of the two huge statues at the entrance of Underwater City. What Riaz learned was that the Siren tribe had abandoned themselves and became demons that plundered everything in the deep sea before they were expelled from this place. But for many years, the Siren race, of course, they wanted to invade the underwater city of the sea and massacre. Why did they slaughter the residents of the underwater city? Boss Luo asked curiously. I said it already. They betrayed Underwater City and betrayed us. Riaz said matter-of-factly. So they were banished. They must have a grudge and want to take revenge on us. Didn't you just say that they were punished because they abandoned themselves? Yes. Riaz nodded. That's what the book said. Boss Luo shook his head. What I'm asking is why the Siren tribe has been tirelessly invading the Undersea City. Is there anything they want here? Riaz, however, revealed a confused expression. Why? Is there a reason? When I was born, the Siren race had been invading Underwater City. Not only me, but when my father and grandfather were alive, the Siren race had already been invading. It's been like this for many years. Boss Luo glanced at Miss Maid. Miss Maid understood and opened her palm. There was a blue diamond-shaped crystal in her palm. I picked this up when I came in. It should have fallen from your serpent. I'll return it to you. It's the magic core of Serpent. Riaz was pleasantly surprised. Wow, that's great. I can actually find it. I'm still annoyed that I don't have this core. I might have to take one from my father's serpent to assemble a new one to participate in the All-Stars competition. Thank you. You're welcome. Miss Maid smiled and suddenly said, Can we watch the assembly and creation of Serpent from the side? Huh? Riaz looked at the two strangers in surprise. He thought for a moment and said, It's okay if it's inconvenient, Boss Luo said casually. No, no, no. You helped me find the magic core. Riaz clenched his teeth and said, I should be thanking you. How about this? Come to my house first, how about that? I'll take care of you properly. Also, are you guys really from the outside world? Can you tell me more about the outside world? Of course. Boss Luo nodded. At this time, Riaz suddenly widened his eyes in surprise. Hey, I can smell your scent now. Strange. Isn't this the scent of Undersea City? Boss Luo smiled mysteriously. Riaz nodded. Oh, come with me. It's still more than an hour's walk from my house. Hurry up. The buses leave on the hour and a half. We can catch the next one. In addition to the conch-like buildings, the entire underwater city was also interspersed with countless transparent pipes. In the pipes, there were some flying tumuli, as well as vehicles larger than flying tumuli that could carry more passengers, constantly shuttling back and forth. The use of magic energy was everywhere. In Underwater City, magic energy completely replaced the use of electricity in modern human society. The Lemurians also used magic energy to create many unimaginable tools. Underwater City, with a population of 9 million, was actually very small compared to the entire modern human society. But there were technologies that were currently unknown to modern human society. Boss Luo hadn't seen the weapon system of Underwater City, so he didn't make a comparison for the time being. He and Miss Maid followed behind Riaz and soon went through the rock wall at the exit, came to the street, and took the bus to the East District. Before getting on the bus, Luochio looked up at the huge white tower in the center of Underwater City. White as snow. But at the same time, he also saw countless distorted faces. They formed the highest white tower. What's this? Camera. What's this? Cell phone. Communication tool. What's this? Riaz was very curious about new things. More than an hour of driving passed unknowingly. We're here. This is my house. Riaz pointed at a flat 2-story conch building and said. It was said that East 13th Street was an area where civilians lived. But the civilians in Underwater City also enjoyed good social benefits. From birth until adulthood, they could receive funding from the kingdom's government. After adulthood, they would be assigned jobs according to the residents' interests and strengths. There was no unemployment here, and there was no so-called real poverty. Even ordinary residents like Riaz had their own independent residence. By the way, Riaz moved out of his home. He only needed to apply for this house. The management office of East Main Street arranged the current residence for Riaz almost instantly. He welcomed Boss Luo and Miss Maid into the house, and then quickly brought 2 bottles of drinks. Sorry. I'm usually the only one living in the house, so it's a bit messy. Riaz said with some embarrassment. Usually no one comes to me. The living room was already full of various parts used to assemble Serpent. The rest of the space in this 2-story house wasn't much better than the living room. Boss Luo picked up a magazine on the sofa and glanced at it. It seems that you really care about the Serpent competition. You want to become a Serpent professional player? No. My dream is to become a Serpent mechanic, Riaz said at this moment. Boss Luo put down the magazine. Then why are you participating in this Serpent competition? Nothing. I'm just a bit curious. Riaz shook his head and immediately stood up. By the way, do you want to eat something? Don't worry. Although this place is messy, the dining room is very clean. Well, so is the kitchen. We're not hungry. Boss Luo smiled and said, You can eat something first. When you start assembling Serpent, you can let her come over to watch. I'll wait here. Riaz looked at Luochio in confusion and nodded subconsciously. He didn't ask much, and he didn't know what to ask. Everything seemed to be natural. Luochio was like a friend that he had known for many years. Well, a good friend came to his house. It was indeed quite casual, right? Then help yourselves. Riaz left the living room in a daze. Luochio found something like a remote control on the chair at this time. After activating it, 2 pillars suddenly stretched out from the wall in front of him, and then a light screen slid down like water. It seems that this is the TV here. Luochio asked Mississippi made to sit beside him. There are quite a lot of channels. This was obviously a way to quickly understand this underwater city. Anyway, he had nothing to do. At this time, on the light screen, it was switched to a channel similar to an official channel. A woman in a formal dress was broadcasting something. It was the speech of the Emperor of the Underwater City Kingdom. The speech seemed to be yesterday. The Emperor of the Underwater City Kingdom looked abnormally young. For the time being, the Lemurians were no different from ordinary humans except that their skin color was slightly darker. It was a speech about the victory of the Lemurians in the war against the Sirens. The general content was that the Siren tribe sent troops to invade a mine in the underwater city not long ago. The Emperor praised the bravery of the soldiers in this battle and also condemned the despicable behavior of the Siren tribe. This is a great era. I, Louis XXXIX, the Emperor of the Underwater City, will definitely lead my people to a brighter future. Louis XXXIX. Boss Luo said thoughtfully. It seems that the Lemurians have a relatively long lifespan. Mississippi Maid listened quietly. At the same time, she began to take out some colorful paper. She was folding paper cranes. After a while, she folded 5 paper cranes. She put the paper cranes in the palm of her hand and blew on them. They instantly flew out of the window of Riaz's house. They went to collect information. Master, this emperor looks very similar to the statue on the left side of the entrance of the underwater city. Mississippi Maid suddenly said with a smile at this time. After all, he is the descendant of the first emperor. Boss Luo said casually, if he doesn't look like him, the process may be more complicated. Mississippi Maid chuckled. She was smart enough to know that this master was actually talking about some small jokes. I'll go and see if Riaz needs any help. Mississippi Maid got up and left her seat. Boss Luo simply changed the channel. There was a program explaining the historical changes of the underwater city. He watched it with great interest. The White Tower of the underwater city was not airtight. On the contrary, almost every floor had a platform that could be opened. On a platform about half the height of the tower, a cold-faced woman in white was sitting with her legs crossed. Her eyes were closed. There was a breeze here, but it was not cold. Miss Cheen, you should go back. You've been out for half a day. At this time, a girl in a silver robe walked over slowly. She came to the side of Miss Cheen in white and said softly, it's lunchtime. His Majesty asked me to invite you over. Miss Cheen in white slowly opened her eyes and glanced at the girl in the silver robe, saying indifferently, I don't remember promising him to have lunch with him. His Majesty said Miss Cheen would agree. The girl in the silver robe smiled faintly, because His Majesty is the Emperor of the underwater city, and Miss Cheen, you are now the property of His Majesty. Then let him wait. Miss Cheen closed her eyes again. The girl in the silver robe didn't continue to speak. She just stood aside and waited quietly. After waiting for nearly 2 hours, Miss Cheen opened her eyes again. I'm tired. Let me send Miss Cheen off. The girl in the silver robe smiled faintly. Miss Cheen and His Majesty's wedding will be held soon. His Majesty ordered me to accompany Miss Cheen all the time. Suit yourself. Miss Cheen stood up. As she walked, there was a clear sound of metal clashing. There were shackles and chains around her ankles. Chapter 1668. The underwater city was a cold and gloomy place. Even though there was day and night, it was just an environment simulation created by the White Tower. This kind of visible light was not the sun and had no temperature. In fact, there were very few places in the underwater city that had green vegetation. However, in the palace, there was a greenhouse courtyard where many plants were planted. These were some seeds that the Lemurians had kept on the ground before they sank to the bottom of the sea. They were then cultivated in the magical greenhouse. Although it was called a courtyard, it was actually not small. It was the size of 2 football fields, and the Emperor of the underwater city, Louis XXXIX, was about to marry Miss Cheen. She was currently living in a corner of this greenhouse. Louis XXXIX had 2 wives who left him one after the other. Therefore, after the wedding, Miss Cheen would become the 3rd empress of the underwater city. That was the dream of all the girls in the underwater city. However, for Miss Cheen, This was a very annoying matter. This level of annoyance even caused her cultivation that she had always maintained to deteriorate. I can't continue like this, she thought to herself. It was just that the palace was heavily guarded, and she had yet to find a way to leave. That silver-robed girl was called Lyoga. She had a bit of the ancestral blood of the Siren clan, and was the exclusive slave of Louis XXXIX. She had extraordinary strength. Young Miss Jean wasn't afraid of Lyoga's monstrous strength if her cultivation wasn't sealed. Currently, because of the shackles on her feet, she was in a state of powerlessness. These shackles had a special device that pierced in her body and continuously released a strange power, causing her cultivation to feel as if it was in a deep sleep. That day, she had a great battle with Gong faunching on the sea and was eventually injured and sunk into the deep sea. When she woke up in the underwater city, she was already shackled. As for her green lotus sword song, it had obviously been confiscated by the emperor of the underwater city. Currently, she did not know where it was placed. In any case, she had already lost contact with the green lotus sword song. Now, she had been trapped in the underwater city for a while. Her injuries had recovered, but unfortunately, she could not use her cultivation. If her cultivation recovered, or if she had the green lotus sword song in her hand, this insignificant underwater city would not be able to imprison her. Now, the emperor of underwater city, Louis the 39th, had fallen in love with her at first sight and insisted on setting a date for their wedding. Miss Jean couldn't resist and could only helplessly stay for the time being, thinking of ways to escape every day. What is this? At this moment, she pointed at the magic energy dazzle in her residence. It was something similar to a television in the overworld. There was an advertisement on it. The Siren clan atavistic slave girl called Luga glanced at it and said calmly, "It's just an advertisement for the upcoming All-Star Flying Statue competition." Looking at the time, the day after tomorrow is the All-Star competition's auditions. Seeing that this Miss Jean seemed to be paying attention, the young girl Lugu said a little more. "Miss, the star competition is a grand event held once every 3 years in Underwater City. It will make the entire Underwater City rejoice." In addition, His Majesty was also the champion of the competition back then. "Oh, is that so?" Miss Jean nodded expressionlessly and then asked, "On the day of the competition, will your emperor attend?" Lugu said, "Of course. During the opening ceremony, His Majesty will give a speech. At the same time, the belt of the previous champion will be sealed, waiting for the new champion to be born." Miss Jean thought for a while and said, "I'm tired of staying in this courtyard for too long. Tell Louis that I want to go and see the competition scene." The young girl Lu Gu said casually, "I will pass on your message. As for whether His Majesty will agree or not, I can't guarantee it. I want to be alone. You can go out." Miss Jean said calmly, "Then I won't disturb you." The young girl didn't force her to stay. "If you need me, just tell me." Louis the 39th looked like a 27 or 28-year-old youth. His skin was slightly darker than the common people. Instead, it was fair, even pale. Fair skin, this was the exclusive symbol of the Underwater City's royal family. When the young girl Lugu came to report, His Majesty was receiving a guest in the reception room, a guest who had hurried over from the sea a few days ago. The young girl Lugu sized him up. The person who came looked a little old and even looked tired. His gray beard seemed to have not been taken care of for a few days. Justin. Lugu remembered this old man's name. But after sizing him up, the young girl lowered her head and stood behind His Majesty the Emperor. "Mr. Justin, I already know about the matter you mentioned." His Majesty the Emperor nodded at this time and said, as if he was heartbroken, "I didn't expect that your Honorable Association's President Charles had already lost his life in the hands of a villain. It's really heartbreaking. And I, too, have lost an ally." The old man in front of her was the captain of another huge submarine of the Black Order, Sapphire. That day, the Black Order was annihilated. But because Justin had to control Sapphire, he was in the sea and avoided the disaster. Later, when he saw that things were not going well, Justin ordered Sapphire to dive quickly. After that, the night mechanism of the British Kingdom began to intervene. Captain Justin had no choice but to steer Sapphire into the deep sea. He did not directly return to the base of the Black Order in the United States. Instead, he directly changed the course and came to this underwater city first. At the same time, he only told His Majesty the Emperor that the president of the Black Order, Charles, had been defeated and died. He did not say that nearly 90% of the religious order's strength had been lost. Now, only a group of technical and logistical personnel were left on Sapphire. He had other plans in mind. "Is there anything I can help you with, Mr. Justin?" Louis XXXIX said solemnly. "You and I are allies. Now that your honorable association's president has died, I think there should be some internal problems in your organization. I think Mr. Justin has come to this underwater city in hopes of getting some help from me, right? Your Majesty the Emperor is righteous." Captain Justin's face was full of excitement. "Just as your Majesty has thought, because of the president's death, the religious order is in a mess internally. Everyone wants to claim the position of the president. You also want to be the president?" His Majesty the Emperor smiled. Captain Justin said righteously, "I just don't want President Charles's painstaking efforts to be destroyed because of some people's seizure of power. How do you want me to help you?" His Majesty the Emperor did not beat around the bush and asked directly. "I want to ask your Majesty to send out the magic energy warriors to help me suppress those voices of unrest in the religious order and reorganize the Black Order." Captain Justin looked at His Majesty's expression and then said, "As long as we can reunite the Black religious order, only then can our cooperation with your Majesty continue, and only then will I have the ability to carry out your Majesty's earlier proposal." Louis XXXIX nodded. "In that case, I will send a magic energy brigade under my command back with Mr. Justin. The commander of this magic energy brigade is a warrior of my underwater city. He will definitely be able to quell the chaos for Mr. Justin. In that case, thank you very much, your Majesty the Emperor." Captain Justin was immediately overjoyed. But in his heart, he was thinking about how to deal with this magic energy brigade after they came close to land. He had long coveted the magic energy equipment of the underwater city. As for the matter of reorganizing the Black religious order, it was indeed true. However, it wasn't as he said. Captain Justin received a report yesterday that Katerina didn't die in the battle. Instead, she returned to the base and quickly suppressed the entire base. She also supported a new leader. What surprised Captain Justin was that the new president of the Black Order was actually called Lamius. They had also discovered that Sapphire did not return and had already issued an order for Sapphire to return. The Magic Energy Brigade needs some time to prepare before it can be deployed. His Majesty the Emperor waved his hand and said, "Mr. Justin, why don't you stay in the underwater city for a few more days? I will follow your Majesty the Emperor's orders." Captain Justin quickly lowered his head and said, "You're welcome." His Majesty the Emperor smiled and said, "After all, I still need Mr. Justin to help me collect more information on the ground. I am willing to serve your Majesty the Emperor." His Majesty smiled and ordered for Mr. Justin and his entourage to be brought to a temporary place for them to settle down. His Majesty the Emperor then brought Miss Leoga back to his study. "What's the matter?" The girl came forward and lowered her head and said, "Your Majesty, Miss Cheen said that she hopes to attend the competition the day after tomorrow and watch the show." A trace of surprise flashed in Louis Xx's eyes. "Oh, she actually has such thoughts. Do you know the reason?" The girl thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps Miss Cheen wants to see if she can find a chance to escape." His Majesty the Emperor smiled and said, "Do you think she can find a chance?" Miss Leoga said indifferently, "I won't let Miss Cheen have a chance." "Then I'll agree." His Majesty the Emperor chuckled and said, "After all, she is about to become my Empress. It's about time for her to appear in front of the public. The opening ceremony the day after tomorrow is a good opportunity. Go and prepare." "Yes." After the girl left, His Majesty the Emperor began to work, sending out document after document and order after order. Underwater City, East 13th Street. "I see. This is the magic energy circuit." Yes. Because of the existence of these magic energy circuits, the energy contained in the magic energy core can be stably extracted. Riaz sighed and said, compared to the ever-improving magic energy application, I think this magic energy circuit is the greatest discovery in magic energy technology. Miss May didn't say anything. At this time, she took out a miniature magic energy core and placed it under a tool similar to a microscope to observe it. These tools were found in Riaz's workshop in his home. There were many tools here, and it was like a multifunctional workshop. Were you drawing? Riaz leaned over and saw this big sister looking at the thin mirror he used for rough processing while drawing something. He couldn't help but be curious. I'm drawing the structure diagram of the magic energy core, Miss Maid said casually. Riaz blinked and looked more carefully. But this big sister was writing some words and symbols that he didn't understand. Chonho. He couldn't help but be more surprised. When can my thin mirror see so carefully? I changed it a little. Miss Maid smiled and stopped her hands. Riaz was very curious and couldn't help but look at the mirror carefully. Suddenly, an unprecedented world opened in front of his eyes. He seemed to be attracted by this new world and was immersed in it. Miss Maid suddenly asked, Riaz, these magic energy cores, do you know how to make them? Riaz didn't raise his head and said, this is produced by the royal family. We receive a fixed share every month for our daily needs. If we want more, we can only get it through other means. For example, Riaz said, generally, it's exchanged with contribution points. After we reach adulthood, we will automatically get 200 contribution points. In addition, if we participate in work or have new inventions or do something beneficial to the underwater city or win awards in some competitions, we can get contribution points. Do you want to participate in the flying serpent competition to get contribution points? Riaz heard this and put down the thin mirror in his hand. He hesitated and said, part of it is. Another part? My father has committed some crimes, so he's currently locked up in prison. Riaz lowered his head and said faintly, if I can get a good ranking in the competition, I can get a large amount of contribution points. Contribution points can reduce my father's sentence. I haven't reached adulthood yet, so I can't participate in work. If I want to get contribution points, I can only do it through other means. Miss Maid glanced at the things Riaz made in the workshop and made a preliminary judgment. This was the result of the young man's self-study. Of course, because of the technical gap, she couldn't evaluate whether these things were good or bad for the time being. But looking at Riaz's expression, Miss Maid already had a plan. Probably Riaz himself didn't think highly of himself. Do you still have a flying serpent here? Miss Maid suddenly said at this time, it's fine if it's eliminated. I just want to see its working principle and general structure. Riaz thought for a while and said, there's one in the garage, but it's the most common model and has been scrapped. Let me see. Miss Maid smiled slightly and said, the popular model is the basic thing, and the basic thing is the best. Okay, wait a moment. Soon after, Riaz struggled to drag out a flying serpent named Asla, whose shell was full of cracks from the garage. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1669. After leaving the mysterious Third Royal Garden, it didn't take long for Tianzi and Nero to come to the periphery of Land of Fall. In fact, it was a return trip. Tianzi even met Auric, who was still selling maps in this place. Huh, you actually walked out of here safely? Auric seemed to be quite surprised. He looked at Tianzi up and down. Can I walk out? Tianzi looked at the other party in annoyance. Did you get the blood fruit? Auric suddenly asked. Tianzi shook his head and said, no, I didn't get anything. But it is indeed dangerous inside. It is quite difficult for me to protect myself with my current ability, so I'll just forget about it. Auric didn't say anything. He just looked at the white-haired girl behind Tianzi curiously. His intuition told him that this white-haired girl and Tianzi seemed to be the same species. Nero was also looking at Auric. Unlike Tianzi's caution, she stepped forward directly. Uncle Tianzi, is this kid your friend? He is just a businessman who bought my Land of Fall trap map. Tianzi shook his head. I have met him once. We are all friends who have done business. Auric didn't care much about Nero saying that he was a kid. He patted Tianzi's shoulder with a smile, "Sir, if you come again next time, you are welcome to buy the latest trap map from me again. I will give you a discount." Tianzi wanted to refuse at first, but thinking that Auric gave him the map because he went through the back door, Tianzi smiled and chatted with Auric for a while. "By the way, you'd better not come to Land of Fall again in the short term," Auric suddenly said. "Why is that?" Auric said, "This Land of Fall, every once in a while it will collapse and shrink. When it collapses, the pressure inside is enough to crush everything. When the collapse ends, the terrain inside the Land of Fall will completely change. At that time, we will need to draw a new map." "Oh, there's such a thing?" Tianzi was startled. He didn't know if the Third Imperial family's original door would be crushed under this kind of collapse. However, the reopening of Land of Fallen also means that there will be a lot of good stuff. Auric smiled and said, "Every time the Land of the Fallen collapses and reactivates, it will attract many powerful beings. This is a small tool I made. Even if it's in a crack, it can communicate. After the Land of the Fallen collapses, I'll contact you through it. If you're interested, you can come and explore." "How can this work?" Tianzi was pleasantly surprised as he took the small item from Elric. Auric patted his chest and said, "It's okay. Who asked us to be friends? Besides, you are the person introduced by Master Musashi. I must take care of you. At that time, if it weren't for Master Musashi, I almost couldn't walk out of the Land of Fall. But because of Master Musashi, I have already died in the Land of Fall once." Tianzi was thinking carefully. It seemed that Master Musashi did have a lot of enemies in the Land of Fall, such as the Burly Man and Tamamoname, but it seemed that he still had friends, such as this Auric. In this way, Musashi didn't deliberately cheat him when he gave him the token. He could indeed find people who could help here, but he needed to find them himself. After saying goodbye to Auric, Tianzi took Nero and planned to return to the Eternal Night Palace as soon as possible. On the way, Nero suddenly put her hands on him and said with a smile, "Uncle Tianzi, you have worked hard along the way. Let me massage your shoulders." "Don't." Tianzi dodged far away as if he had seen a ghost. "I really can't accept your service. Miss Nero, please be merciful and let me go. I am very grateful." "I will be very sad." Nero squeezed out 2 tears pitifully. Tianzi flicked his sleeves, and the black mist turned into a cloud and directly appeared in front of him. Nero shrugged and suddenly opened her palm. A small green bean appeared in her palm. She threw it up and ate it. This was what Auric secretly put on Tianzi's clothes before. "Uncle Tianzi, don't run so fast. Tell me about the Eternal Night Palace. I want to see the strategy." "I don't have it. What are you doing?" "Don't ask. If you ask, I am a maid." Thus, after playing around for a while, the Eternal Night Palace appeared in front of them. Tianzi repeatedly told Nero not to speak carelessly and to follow him closely. This time, he infiltrated the Transcendent Organization with his master's mission. It was very important, and he couldn't make any mistakes, and so on. "Uncle, there's an uncle dressed like a warrior coming. That is Master Musashi." Tianzi looked over and saw that Master Musashi had caught a shark-like void original demon and was riding it over. The gatekeeper of the Eternal Night Palace quickly arrived in front of Tianzi and said with a bit of surprise, "You really came back. You really got the blood relation fruit." Tianzi took out the blood relation fruit that he had already prepared and offered it. "Master Musashi, the blood relation fruit you wanted is here. Thanks to you, I finally came back safely." "Oh, that's true." Master Musashi nodded and didn't take the fruit immediately. Instead, he looked at the white-haired girl beside Tianzi and asked in confusion, "Well, this is—" Tianzi rushed to say, "Master Musashi, this is a junior in my family. She came to this dimensional void earlier than me and didn't expect to meet me in the Fallen Land. This poor Taoist boldly wishes to bring this niece into the organization as well. I hope Grandmaster Wu Chong will agree." As he spoke, he took out another fruit. It was the Blood Relation Fruit King. This is really a good thing. Master Musashi didn't care about the ordinary Blood Relation Fruit, but this Fruit King couldn't be ignored. He looked at Tianzi in surprise and said, It seems that you really got some benefits in the Fallen Land. You're lucky. Master Musashi, what do you think of my niece? Master Musashi said indifferently, come with me and stay in the Eternal Night Palace. We'll talk about joining later. Help! Master Musashi was stunned, and Taienzi's face suddenly turned black. At this time, Nero screamed in horror, help! Help me! This old man kidnapped me. What nonsense are you talking about? Taienzi's voice was stern, but at the same time, he was frightened. Nero's face turned pale, and she fell to the ground. Don't believe this old man's words. He wants to sneak into your organization with bad intentions. This guy is here as a spy. He has a conspiracy. If a shin could fall to the ground, it would have long fallen to the ground. Taienzi opened his mouth at this time. His tongue almost sprung out and tied a knot. His pupils contracted. This crazy woman, does she know what she's doing? Nonsense. In a hurry, seeing that Taienzi was about to attack, Master Musashi suddenly waved his hand, and a huge pressure instantly pressed Taienzi to the ground, making him unable to move. Woo! Master Musashi, don't listen to this girl. She's slandering me. Let her speak. Master Musashi was expressionless. As he said, he stared at Nero and said indifferently, little girl, do you know that if you lie, I won't let you go easily? Nero nodded timidly at this time. I know. But it was really him who kidnapped me and stole my fruit. On the way, he asked me to be obedient, otherwise he would torture me. I'm scared. Master Musashi said, but why did you ask me for help? Aren't you afraid that I'm in cahoots with him? Nero blinked her eyes and said innocently, because uncle, you're very good-looking. Not like him. When he smiles, it's particularly bad. Moreover, he likes people with beards. So sexy. Master Wuchang stroked his beard stubble inexplicably and said with a smile, this is a new reason. Then you tell me, how did he kidnap you? Why did he kidnap you? Nero said, I don't know. I was living at home, but this old man suddenly broke in and said that he was looking for blood fruit. I gave him a few at that time, but he didn't think it was enough and insisted on taking all my little red. Little what? Little red? Nero nodded. Little red? He said it's some blood mother tree. I don't know what mother tree. I just know Little Red. Little Red has been with me since I grew up. It's my family. I take care of it carefully every day. Little Red's fruits are like my children. I don't even want to eat them, but this old man wanted to take them all away. I refused, so he scolded me, beat me, and set me on fire. Your King spouting nonsense. Taienzi was so angry in his heart that he was about to explode, but at this moment, a faintly discernible binding force made him unable to speak. The Black Soul Envoy agreement that was reversed by Nero took effect. At present, he must respect Nero. Master Musashi just listened with a playful attitude at first, but when Nero mentioned the Blood Mother tree, he couldn't help but pay attention to it. As for the Bloodfruit King that Taienzi offered, it seemed to confirm the existence of the mother tree from the side. Bloodfruit King had a 100% success rate of sensing other worlds. It was a great treasure for powerful beings who intended to complete the unification of legends. Even for him who took other evolutionary routes, it was also of great use. Tell me in detail. And so, the royal garden, the huge ancient stone door, the amethyst key that opened it. Ever since the young girl was born, she had always been in the garden. She was a girl who happily watered the plants. But suddenly, one day, evil people fell from the sky and stole the fruits that she had painstakingly planted. Then, they threatened her and tried to take over the young girl's home. After a long time, Master Musashi breathed a sigh of relief. I know about the huge stone door in the Fallen Land, he said slowly. At that time, one of our sovereigns had also studied the stone door, but it couldn't be opened. Even if the interior of the Fallen Land collapsed, it didn't break. It just changed places. I didn't expect that behind this stone door, there was actually a mysterious garden hidden. In this garden, it seemed that in addition to the precious mother tree, there were many magical creatures and plants. It was probably a great biological treasure. but he didn't believe the white-haired girl's words. Of course, Tainzi didn't believe it either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Tainzi go to the Fallen Land in the first place. I already know about this matter. Master Musashi looked at the purple crystal key that Nero handed over at this time. I'll verify whether it's true or false. But before I get a conclusion, I'll have to trouble the two of you to temporarily accept the custody of the Eternal Night Palace. What else could Tainzi say? He could only have a black face. Nero's move had completely disrupted his overall calculation. At this moment, he really couldn't figure out a way. But listening to Musashi's words, it was obvious that he didn't fully believe it. But even if he got through safely this time, he was afraid that his future undercover missions would be full of difficulties. His future would be bleak. Then, Master Musashi directly waved his hand and captured Nero and Tainzi directly into the Eternal Night Palace and threw them into a cell. As for Master Musashi, after doing this, he directly left with the purple crystal key. In the cell, Tainzi stared at Nero and said with hatred, "You're crazy. Do you know what you're doing?" "I know." Nero blinked and said, "I just betrayed you, Uncle Tainzi." "You still have the nerve to say." Tainzi jumped up. "You're dead. You're dead. I will definitely tell Master everything that you have done in full detail. Just you wait. For now on, you can't speak, Uncle Tainzi." Nero said with a smile at this time. "What do you want to do?" His mouth was directly sealed, and he could only widen his eyes. At this time, Nero suddenly pulled down the clothes on her shoulders, then pinched her throat and shouted, "Help! Help!" On the contrary, Tainzi calmed down. Did this girl have a screw loose in her head? Everyone in this Transcendence organization was a powerful life form. If they didn't have extraordinary wisdom and monstrous intelligence, how could they have a chance to survive under the merciless heavenly Tao? Who would believe such a low-level method? You disgusting, coarse old man. How dare you molest a good woman in broad daylight? If the heavens don't take you, I, Long Yangjun, will be here. Don't be afraid, miss. I'm coming to save you. She saw a man wearing a red robe with a sword hanging from his waist. His handsome eyes were charming as he slowly walked over. Tainzi was startled. He really felt a sense of familiarity when he heard this sentence in broad daylight. But how could someone believe such a crude method of Nero? Are you kidding me? Hashtag. Chapter 1670. Damn you, old thief. Facing the stern voice of the charming man in red, Tainzi wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. This charming man in red was the second guy he saw in the Eternal Night Palace. He didn't know what was the relationship between him and Master Wuchang. "Don't worry, I'm coming to save you." As he spoke, Lord Longyang actually opened the door to the prison cell. Then, he lifted Nero up like a kitten and brought him out of the prison cell. But in the next second, Long Yangjun opened the door of another cell and threw Nero in. As if he had done a good deed, Duke of Longyang clapped his hands comfortably, then said solemnly, "All right, young lady, this old bastard can no longer bully you now. You don't have to thank me. It's just a small matter." Nero opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Long Yangjun said casually, "This dungeon is guarded by Musashi. You should be locked in by Musashi, so I don't have the right to release you. Well, I'm leaving." Long Yangjun, who came suddenly and left casually, left quietly. Nero sat in another cell stupidly, lowering her head and thinking about something. "Ha ha 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 ha." Then Tainzi laughed wildly. "You framed me. You suffered a loss." Nero didn't say anything, just lowering her head. Tainzi laughed dryly after that. Seeing that Nero still didn't speak and lowered her head in a daze, he approached tentatively. "Kid, what are you doing?" "Hey, uncle." Nero lowered her head. "You said this is the task given to you by the boss, right?" "Yes, this is the task given by the master." "How dare I make a fuss about this?" Tainzi frowned. Nero suddenly raised her head and said softly, "Then tell me. I've ruined your task. Why hasn't the boss appeared yet? Does he really not like me? He doesn't even come to see me." "Kid, you're... By the way, how long have you been trapped here?" 55,270,080 hours, then 24 minutes. That second, just now, was the 35th second. Tae-Inzi was stunned. He really wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. He was very clear about the loneliness of being imprisoned. Perhaps Master has something to consider. You don't have to be like this. In my opinion, maybe Master sent me to the dimensional void dimension to look for you. Really? Nero looked at Tae-Inzi with tears in her eyes, and her voice was a little hoarse. Master has a power that you and I can't imagine. Tae-Inzi racked his brains and said, Master has always been like this. There must be a reason for his actions. We just haven't figured it out yet. Besides, our black soul life lanterns are stored in the Ark of the Covenant. Even if we die outside, we can still be revived. As long as the life lantern in the appointment cabinet does not change, we will be safe outside. Master is busy every day, so naturally, he can't pay attention to everything. Really? Nero said faintly. Of course. Tae-Inzi nodded. You see, I've done a lot of things before, but I'm still doing well now. Kid, don't panic. I'm here for everything. Uncle, you're a good person. Nero sighed softly, stood up, tidied up her messy clothes, and said seriously, I'm sorry for just now. I was willful. I won't do it again. Uncle, it's all my fault for ruining your plans. Let's forget about the previous things. Tae-Inzi shook his head and immediately said, I thought about it carefully just now. It might not be a bad thing for you to mess around like this. Nero blinked. What do you mean? Tae-Inzi sat down cross-legged and rubbed his forehead with both hands. Now, that Musashi knows about the garden, and you've given him the key. I think the Transcendent Organization will probably send people to enter the stone gate to investigate. There are a large number of guards in the garden. At that time, you can order the guards to capture the people who investigate, and then you and I will carefully interrogate them. This time, Master ordered me to sneak in to investigate the information of the sovereign in the Transcendent Organization. We can torture this information out of the people who investigate. This is equivalent to completing the task, and we can naturally return. You've thought about it. Nero opened her eyes wide at this time and looked at Tae-Inzi with a face of admiration. Tae-Inzi stroked his beard and said with a smile, When I was in the martial arts world, I still used some small tricks. It's not a big skill. Much better than me. Nero shook her head. I only know how to ruin things. I'm useless. I can't do anything. No wonder Miss Yi wants to punish me all day. No. This has nothing to do with you. Tae-Inzi shook his head fiercely and said, She's just black-hearted. Humph. I'll overthrow this black-hearted woman sooner or later. Kid, don't be afraid. You have me. If she wants to punish you, I'll risk my life to protect you. Uncle, Nero suddenly sobbed, curled up and said, No one has ever cared about me so much. Since I was young, I was trained like a machine. I walked out from the pile of dead people. Even my best friend wanted to kill me. I don't know what the meaning of my life is. I only know that it's good to live. Do you know, one year was very cold. It was Christmas. I was cut more than 20 times. I fell in the alley, but I was hungry. A mouse crawled over. I could only bite its tail. But not far from me, a family was preparing for Christmas dinner. But at that time, there was a family not far away from Christmas. At that time, I was thinking, why didn't I have parents when I was born? No one has ever treated me as well as you. No one has ever. Uncle, if only I met you earlier. Kid, don't cry, kid. Tae-Inzi hurriedly grabbed the iron bars of the prison cell. Kid, don't cry. Uncle is here. No one will bully you again, kid. Really? Uncle, are you really willing to protect me? Nero came forward and held Tae-Inzi's hand tightly. Even if he bullies me, will you still help me? A dead pig is not afraid of boiling water. Anyway, that black-hearted woman doesn't like me. Am I really afraid of her? Tae-Inzi snorted coldly. No, Miss Maid still wants me to punish her. Nero sighed. I don't want to implicate you anymore, Uncle. You are a good person. I'm just a tool that can be discarded at any time. I said I would help you. Tae-Inzi said angrily. Even if we become Black Soul envoys, we are not slaves. Uncle, Nero sniffled hard. Will you really help me copy? It's just a punishment. Tae-Inzi shook his head and laughed. I thought it was a difficult thing. What can I do if I promise you? Well, kid, what are you doing? Nero blinked and pressed Tayenzi's palm on an agreement that had just been spat out. Agreement. Uncle, look. Tayenzi promised to complete the punishment for Nero, and there were still 267,000 copies left. Tayenzi promised that he would bear the punishment for Miss Maid and protect Nero in the future. Wait, Tayenzi suddenly shivered and pointed at Nero with trembling fingers. You little girl, you tricked me? You just cried and said everything just now. Were they all pretending? Nero just gave him a bright smile. Uncle, if I were not pitiful, would I not be pitiful? Tayenzi opened his mouth and then snorted coldly. He sat down with his back to Nero and scolded in a low voice, "Crazy girl." Nero did not respond for a long time. Tayenzi frowned and felt something was wrong for a while. He turned around and saw Nero fell to the ground at this time. Her face became extremely pale. Her body even swelled up like a balloon. After a while, Nero's distorted face suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of black smoke. Her body gradually shrank, but her face was even paler. You crazy girl, what conspiracy do you want to play on me? Tayenzi snorted coldly at this time. Don't expect me to believe you again. Nero got up and sat down against the wall. She stuck out her tongue and knocked on her head. Hey, I seem to have eaten something wrong. Well, I'm sleepy. I'll sleep for a while. Uncle, don't do anything shameful to my back. Why don't you die? Tayenzi snorted coldly and simply meditated. He let his mind sink into his memory to see if he could dig out something. Nero covered her mouth. After coughing twice, she fell asleep. Strange, the explosive seed has been detonated. Why is there no movement in the Eternal Night Palace? On a floating continent in front of the Eternal Night Palace, a short figure looked from afar. I clearly saw Musashi bring the old man in. The short figure shook his head. At this time, a few more figures came quickly and came to the side of this short figure. Elric, you said you want to blow up the Eternal Night Palace and let Musashi escape in embarrassment. Where's the explosion? One of the figures quickly said, I've already prepared an inescapable net. I'm just waiting for Musashi to fall into the trap. Well, let's wait and see. The short figure, Elric frowned and said, he will come out eventually. By the way, I still can't contact Tamamonome and Pan-Man. I can't find them. There's no news at all. Elric said thoughtfully, forget about Pan-Man. Tamamonome is actually absent. It's really rare. Forget it. Now that the fallen land is about to collapse, my business has to be suspended. I have time to play with Musashi slowly here. Okay, let's discuss and set up a few more traps. They began to plot again. Between the thrones, Master Musashi stood there slightly uneasily. His handsome figure seemed to have nowhere to place. He had to find a time when the throne wasn't paying attention to quietly scratch his armpit. The one in front of him was the Fushi throne, the throne that was currently on duty. At this time, a purple crystal floated in the palm of the Fushi throne. He had been observing this purple crystal for some time. This key should be real. Finally, the Fushi throne slowly said, it can open the fallen land, this magical stone door. As for what is behind the stone door, my fate chart can't calculate it for the time being. Even your fate chart can't calculate it? Master Musashi was a bit surprised. The Fushi throne's calculation ability could be said to be the best in the Transcendent organization. There's a mysterious power that is blocking it. The Fushi throne shook his head. The gap between dimensions is endless. Who knows what is there that we haven't come into contact with? However, if we really want to explore the world behind this stone door, I feel that it is a bit dangerous. After saying that, the Fushi throne flicked the key back to Musashi's hand and said, but in history, risk and reward coexist. The world behind this stone door can be explored. The difficulty is temporarily set as if anyone wants to go, then go. At the highest difficulty. Musashi frowned. Could it be that even the senior members of the Transcendent organization would fall into this difficulty? Even if the throne made a move, there would be a certain degree of difficulty. Throne, Is this the result of your calculation? Only half. The Fushi throne shook his head. A is just the beginning. The fate chart has stopped here and can't continue. I understand. Master Musashi nodded. Then he raised the amethyst key with one hand and wrote something in the void with the other. Not long after, the Eternal Night Palace's entrance to the Lost Paradise in the Void and the various transcendent organizations' small worlds all had the same information. Mysterious place with a difficulty or higher. Discovered the Bloodline Mother Tree. Suspected to have more lost treasures. Other information unknown. No acceptance requirements. No limit on the number of people. No time limit. If you want to go or not, don't complain if you die. Then, Master Musashi directly inserted the amethyst key into the Lost Paradise in the Void. Then, he talked about another matter. Then, about the newcomer introduced by the Taisetsu. Temporarily make him an outer member. If he makes any contributions, then bring him to see me. The Fushi throne said indifferently. As for that young girl, she will also be an outer member. You can arrange it. Okay. Master Musashi nodded. Then, he lowered his head and retreated. The Fushi throne suddenly said, That's right. Some of your old friends have come to see you. If there's nothing else, you can send them away. If they're willing to join, they can stay. Old friends? Master Musashi frowned. He was confused. However, he still nodded and left the throne room. The Fushi throne took out his fate chart and slowly turned it. Strange. Why would I suddenly want to help this old man and young girl? Huh. The fate chart turned and suddenly shattered. Inside the throne room, the Fushi throne opened his mouth, not giving it to me? Who is it? Forget it. I can't afford to offend them. Shaking his head, the Fushi throne picked up the pieces of the fate chart. It could be put back. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. Same as before. Chapter 1671. Underwater City, nighttime. Because the weather system was automatically adjusted, it was considered nighttime for the time being. You want to ask us to be your support when you participate in the competition? While eating, Riaz suddenly made a very sudden request at the table. By the way, this dinner was prepared by Miss Maid, so Riaz was embarrassed for a long time. Facing Boss Luo's inquiry, Riaz lowered his head, but his hands firmly grasped his pants. Yes, when we were in the workshop, I saw that Big Sister could quickly grasp the structure of Flying Serpent. That's amazing. So, I think if it's just a support during the competition, then there's definitely no problem. Miss May didn't say anything. She just added dinner for Boss Luo, then elegantly ate the food. Boss Luo curiously asked, Why do you suddenly have such an idea? Riaz helplessly said, Flying tumbler competition, there are many teams that sign up to participate, and many of the veteran teams even have sponsors behind them. Although there are also teams that participate in the competition in their own name. Even if they are individuals, they will bring one or two assistants. Otherwise, I can only replace the damaged parts myself, so every time it is damaged, it will waste a lot of time. I really can't find anyone else, but the competition will start the day after tomorrow. Riaz looked at Luoccio's expression. Seeing that he didn't have any reaction, he gritted his teeth and said, I know, this request is very sudden, but I really have no other choice. I'm not an adult yet, so I can't participate in the work. The contribution points I have are given by my mother, but most of them have been used to buy the parts of Flying Tumbler. But as long as I can get a certain ranking, I can get contribution points. I can share the contribution points with you. All you need to do is help me replace the parts when I'm competing. Boss Luo casually said, So, if you can't get a ranking in the competition, it's equivalent to saying that we helped for nothing, right? This. Riaz opened his mouth, then suddenly clenched his fist and said, I will try my best. Even if I lose the competition, I will write an IOU. When I can earn contribution points in the future, I will definitely pay you back. It's not a matter of contribution points. Boss Luo shook his head and said, I heard that you are participating in the competition to obtain a large number of contribution points so that you can reduce your father's sentence. Is that right? Riaz nodded. Luoccio continued. In fact, when you become an adult, you can also earn contribution points through work. I think the contribution points you earn from your work and the contribution points you get from the competition should be the same thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? How long before you become an adult? 3 years. Riaz lowered his head. But I can't wait for 3 years. Why? Boss Luo said indifferently. Is it because your father is sick in prison and won't make it past 3 years? Riaz shook his head. My mother is a warrior of Underwater City. She is about to go to war with the sea monster tribe. I don't know if she can come back after this war. Next month is the anniversary of my mother and father's marriage. I hope that before my mother goes to war, I can let my mother and father see each other. Your mother is a warrior of Underwater City? Boss Luo was slightly surprised. My mother is good at physical fitness. Riaz nodded and said, so, after graduation, she was assigned to the soldier camp. Boss Luo said, I looked at the introduction of Underwater City. As a soldier, the benefits should be much higher than normal jobs. Your mother should have a lot of contribution points on hand. Riaz sighed and said, no, I used them all. My father was originally sentenced to death. My mother almost used up all her savings to be sentenced to indefinite imprisonment, and she was not allowed to visit him. This time, my mother went to war because she wanted to get a lot of contribution points. If I could grow up quickly, if I was smart enough, I could show great potential when I was still learning. Unfortunately, it was too late. My previous life was wasted. I only knew how to play. His fingernails dug deeply into his palms, but he already didn't speak of the past. His gaze was resolute as he said, participating in the Flying Serpent competition is the only thing I can think of right now, and also the only thing I can do. So, I'm begging the two of you, no matter what you want me to do. I like the look in your eyes now. Boss Luo smiled and said, but I don't recommend you to do anything that is beyond your ability now, and don't easily say things like no matter what you do. Riaz opened his mouth. Luochio said indifferently, before saying these words, do you know if you have enough ability to fulfill your promise in the future? Behind these words, what kind of unknown and consequences do you bear? Have you thought about it carefully? If I help you, but my request is that you help me to kill a person unconditionally in the future. Will you agree? Of course, this is just a hypothesis. The teenager didn't kill anyone. He didn't even think about killing people. In the Underwater City, it was unknown how many years it had been since someone killed someone. Riaz sat down absent-mindedly, looking at the fragrant food in front of him, but he had no appetite and his heart was in a mess. The boss and Miss Maid were still eating slowly. They didn't treat him as an outsider. Riaz felt like he was the guest in this house. I'll go out for a walk. He pushed the chair away and stood up, walking out quickly with his head down. There are rooms upstairs. If you're tired, you can rest upstairs. Help yourself. The door opened and closed in an instant. The youth ran out of the door at lightning speed. Boss Luo didn't speak for a long time. When he almost finished eating, he suddenly asked Miss Maid, there should be kitchen utensils that can keep people warm. Miss Maid smiled and said, yes, there is. Boss Luo said casually, don't turn off the light at the door. Well, I'll go look at the magic energy dazzle for a while. Okay. Miss Maid stood up and went to clean up. Oh, isn't this Riaz? What do you like? I can give you a discount. In front of the Flying Tutor shop, the salesperson greeted Riaz quite familiarly. Most of the shops on this street were selling Flying Tutor. There were also many repair shops. This was Riaz's favorite place to go. I'm just looking. Riaz shook his head. He did like a balancer, but the price was out of his range. I heard that you want to sign up for the All-Star competition. The salesperson suddenly asked. I'm just trying. Riaz stuttered. I have something to do. I'll go first. Goodbye. Riaz, wait, don't go. The salesperson suddenly stopped him, then waved at Riaz mysteriously and said with a smile, there's a place that might be suitable for you. Riaz opened his mouth, but when he saw the mysterious expression on the salesperson's face, he couldn't help but follow the salesperson. This salesperson worked in a Flying Tutor shop on East 13th Street. This shop mainly sold second-hand Flying Tutor parts. In addition, it was said that there were channels to get some proper military-grade parts. But Riaz had never seen a military-grade thing. The best thing he got in this shop was just an industrial-grade sensor. At this time, he followed the salesperson into a small alley. The more he walked, the darker the environment became, making Riaz faintly feel uneasy. "Mr. Wolf, where are we going?" Riaz quickly walked up and asked. "You'll know when we get there." The salesperson, Mr. Wolf, lowered his head and smiled, but his speed increased a bit. "Riaz, didn't you want to get some better flying tutor parts? There's a place that can help you." This seemed to hit Riaz's weak spot. His heartbeat accelerated, as if there were ants crawling in his heart. Finally, after passing through a dark and winding path, Mr. Wolf stopped in front of a very ordinary-looking house. This house was backed by the Flying Tudor commercial road on East 13th Street, and next to it was the artificial river of Underwater City on East 13th Street. At this time, Mr. Wolf knocked on the door of the house 3 times, then 2 times, then 1 time, and finally 4 times before he stopped. "Secret signal?" Riaz looked at Mr. Wolf with some surprise, but he suddenly said, "After you go in, no matter what you see or hear, don't make a sound. I'll take you directly to the person in charge inside. If you have anything you want, just say it. The person in charge here can help you." "Really?" Riaz couldn't help but widen his eyes in disbelief. "Of course." Mr. Wolf smiled and said, "But the help won't be for free. You have to pay some price." Riaz was startled, but he suddenly remembered what the big brother said at dinner. I don't kill people." Mr. Wolf was startled. Then he laughed and patted Riaz's shoulder vigorously. "I don't dare to kill people. What are you thinking? At most, you'll have to do some physical labor. Of course, if you want more things, you'll have to do more work. Don't worry, I won't let you do anything heinous." "Physical labor?" Riaz looked at Mr. Wolf suspiciously, thought for a while, and said, "If that's the case, I can stop talking. It's about to open," Mr. Wolf suddenly said. Riaz quickly shut his mouth. The door of the house slowly opened, but it only opened a little, and a tall figure stuck half of his body out of the door. There was a scar on his left eye that slid down to the corner of his mouth. As for his left eye, it was emitting a strange, dark green light. Riaz secretly gasped, knowing that this tall man's left eye was equipped with a magic energy prosthetic eye. He couldn't help but secretly speculate about the origin of this tall man. "Just this?" The tall man glanced at Riaz and said indifferently. Mr. Wolf stepped forward and smiled familiarly. "What do you think? Is it okay?" The tall man sized him up and nodded. "Okay, come in with me, but don't talk. Don't disturb the guests here." "Understood." Mr. Wolf made a gesture of understanding. Then he put one hand on Riaz's shoulder and followed the tall man into the house. Riaz discovered that this house was not as simple as it looked from the outside. After the tall man led the 2 of them into the house, he walked all the way until he reached a room. Only then did he lift up the floor of the room, revealing a staircase that led to the basement. The tall man walked into the staircase first. Riaz finally couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Mr. Wolf, who is this person? Why does he look so fierce?" Mr. Wolf said in a low voice, "I don't know his name. He never tells others. Here, we just call him 19. It's normal for him to look fierce. After all, he's a retired magic energy warrior." "A fell warrior," Riaz exclaimed, but his mouth was immediately covered by Mr. Wolf. "Okay, the time to talk is over. From now on, you can't talk anymore, understand?" Mr. Wolf said solemnly. Riaz's heart was beating fast as he nodded. At this time, after walking through the long staircase, they finally saw the flat bottom. Riaz estimated that this place seemed to be under the artificial river of East 13th Street. However, he did not know what kind of person had actually opened up such a large area under the artificial river. After a while, under 19th's lead, they passed through a heavy metal door and came to a bright white hall. As soon as Riaz stepped into this bright white hall, he was stunned by the scene before him. Around the hall, there were many transparent rooms, and in these rooms, Riaz could see many boys and girls wearing revealing clothes. At the same time, he also saw many people standing in front of the transparent walls of these rooms. They were all wearing masks, and their original appearances could not be seen. But from the voices, they seemed to be adults. Some were tall, some were thin, some were fat, and some were bloated. There were men and women. Riaz looked at this scene strangely. When he saw the girls wearing revealing clothes in the rooms, his face and ears turned red. At this time, a very beautiful boy with very fair skin, wearing only a pair of white trousers, was being hugged by a woman wearing a mask, whose body was 4 times the size of Riaz. "Auntie, I've thought it through. I don't want to work hard anymore." "Oh, little baby, you still calling me Annie?" Then he saw the woman hugging the boy and walking into another sealed room. It seemed that many people were like this, hugging a beautiful boy or girl and entering similar sealed rooms. What were these people doing? Riaz's heart became more and more suspicious. Mr. Wolf said that he had to do some physical work. Could it be that he had to stand in these transparent rooms and then enter the sealed room with the so-called Annie? Although it was a little embarrassing to only wear a pair of trousers, and he didn't know what to do in a room. But at this time, Riaz saw another person walking out of the sealed room. It was a man and a girl. The girl's face had a trace of blush, and there was a smile on her face. It didn't seem to be difficult. If that's the case, maybe I can give it a try. Riaz thought to himself. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 1672. In the innermost room of this strange place, Riaz finally met the person in charge of this clubhouse called Happy Domain. Mr. Wolf had told Riaz about the Happy Domain later, saying that this was a place that specialized in selling happiness. Riaz never knew that happiness could be sold, but the customers he saw along the way wearing masks. Although they were wearing masks, the smiles on their exposed lips couldn't be concealed. That kind of smile should be happy. Their gazes are also different from the gazes of the residents of Underwater City that Riaz saw on the streets. He couldn't describe what kind of feeling it was. In his memory, there was only one place where the residents of Underwater City had such gazes. That was at the venue of the Flying Tumbler competition. People were celebrating, cheering for the contestants they supported at the top of their lungs. There were also times when they cursed their opponents. My mind wandered. Riaz's gaze returned to the owner of the Happy Domain clubhouse. It was a man who looked a little feminine. He wore a crimson shirt that exposed his chest, and his face was covered in makeup. He had bright makeup like the girls who came out to sing and dance in the middle of the Flying Tumbler competition. In addition, there were 2 cute but scantily clad girls. A girl was holding the clubhouse owner's palm and carefully trimming his fingernails. As for the other girl, she was kneeling on the blanket on the ground, gently rubbing the clubhouse owner's legs. "Wolf, this is the young man you introduced this time." The clubhouse owner sized up Riaz before slowly speaking. Mr. Wolf's face was filled with smiles. It was a smile that was even more exaggerated than when he received customers at the Flying Tumbler shop. "Yes, Mr. Riaz. His name is Riaz. He will be an adult in 3 years. His mother is a regular soldier of Underwater City. As for his father, he is a researcher of the 6th Research Institute. His background is quite clean." The clubhouse owner, named Riaz, smiled non-committally, but he also left his seat and walked in front of Riaz. His fingernails are especially long, like the claws of the sirens. Riaz felt his breathing begin to quicken. At this moment, Levis directly grabbed Riaz's chin, then circled around him twice. Finally, he casually grabbed Riaz's buttocks, causing Riaz to chuckle in shock. "What fresh little guy. You'll be very popular, I think." Levis flipped the hair on his chest and sat on the desk. "As long as you're satisfied." Mr. Wolf's smile grew even brighter. "So what about the price? Let me take a look." "Don't worry." Levis stretched out his hand, and a young girl immediately understood and gave Levis a palm-sized box. This box looked like a mobile phone, but it looked more like a former PDA. It had a flip cover, but there were no buttons. On the projected light, some detailed information quickly appeared. Levis narrowed his eyes and looked at it. Mr. Wolf's smile gradually became a little stiff. Riaz felt something was wrong at this time, but he could only remember Mr. Wolf's rule of not asking too much and not talking too much. The atmosphere was a little strange. He suddenly had an impulse to leave. Especially after Mr. Wolf suddenly grabbed him, he felt a spiritual resistance. "Wolf, you didn't hide the information of this child from me." Mr. Wolf suddenly glanced at Mr. Wolf. Of course. How dare I deceive you, Mr. Wolf? Mr. Wolf quickly waved his hand and said, even if you give me 100 times more courage, I wouldn't dare. You didn't deceive me, but it seems that you hid something from me. Mr. Wolf shook his head and said, this child's father is no longer a researcher of the 6th Research Institute. His father is now a criminal of the kingdom and a felon with a life sentence. His crime is treason. What? How? The former was Riaz's surprised voice. The latter was Mr. Wolf's exclamation. Looking at the stunned expressions on the two men's faces almost at the same time, Mr. Leavish chuckled. Interesting. The son doesn't know what his father is guilty of, and the introducer didn't find out the truth before sending him to me. It's really interesting. It seems that you all treat my place as a welfare institution. Kacha. The sound came from the arm of the former mystic warrior 19, who had a terrible scar on her left eye. It was like a mechanical bite sound. Mr. Wolf subconsciously looked up, only to see that 19 had already raised her left arm. On her left arm, there was a layer of thick and heavy grayish-white gauntlets. As for the center of her palm, there was even a shimmering hole. Mr. Wolf was so scared that his legs trembled, and he said in horror, Mr. Wolf, believe me, I really don't know about this. Treason? How is this possible? I have followed the news. Wasn't Riaz's father officially convicted of a major mistake that caused a large number of casualties? How could it be treason? There must be some misunderstanding. Yes, it is indeed a misunderstanding. Leavis said indifferently, it's just a misunderstanding, or rather, you were misled. Well, Wolf, because of your carelessness, I have decided to terminate the future cooperation with you. 19, send this Mr. Wolf out. Oh, by the way, don't forget to give this Mr. Wolf a bliss needle as a service fee for this period of time. Bliss needle? I don't want it. I don't want it. Mr. Wolf suddenly shouted in horror, and he even took out a white knife from his underwear. I don't want it. I won't say anything. Let me out of here. I promise as long as I can. 19 suddenly took action and punched Mr. Wolf in the abdomen. With just one punch, Mr. Wolf's body directly collapsed, and there was no more movement. 19 didn't say a word and directly carried Mr. Wolf out of the room. At this time, Riaz's face was already pale with fright. At this time, only he, Mr. Leavis, and the two girls were left in the room. You can go, young man. You are not welcome here. Leavis suddenly shook his head and said, What? Riaz was a little surprised. Oh, young man. Leavis looked at Riaz with some annoyance. Do you know, because of this idiot wolf, I am now likely to be targeted by the military police of Underwater City? Oh my God, I just moved to another place. I don't understand what you are saying. Riaz shook his head and frowned. You just said my father's crime. What is it? Young man, I have no interest in being your life mentor. Leavis waved his hand at this time. I have no interest in answering your questions. Forget what happened tonight. Of course, the most important thing is to forget me. Oh my God, why am I still wasting time with you here? Where's 19? Why hasn't 19 come back? Throw this young man out for me and prepare the boat. Boat, I want to leave here immediately. You. Riaz was about to say something, but at this time, he suddenly felt his consciousness was empty. The back of his neck seemed to have suffered a violent blow. 19 had come back and was right behind him. Riaz fell to the ground at once. 19 glanced at him with a cold face and frowned. This is Josher's child? Throw him out. Leavis shook his head. And don't forget to prepare a boat for me. I don't want to go back to the prison of Underwater City anymore. You don't know. That place will only deprive me of the source of happiness. I would rather attack the nest of the Siren tribe than go back there again. Damn, the military police must have already blocked the door outside. Or they're blocking the door on the way. Oh, why am I so unlucky? 19 glanced at Leavis expressionlessly, then picked up Riaz without saying a word and walked out. Riaz heard some sounds. It was like an alarm. He woke up, but found that he was thrown in a garbage station at this time. Riaz spent a lot of effort to climb out of the garbage station. He didn't know why he was here, but he remembered that after he went to the Bliss Club, Riaz walked out of the alley in a daze. He saw a fire not far away. The fire almost illuminated a small part of East 13th Street. Riaz was shocked and quickly rushed to the fire. At this time, many residents nearby had already walked out of the fire. As for Underwater City, the disaster management team had been dispatched to put out the fire. Riaz looked at the fire in a daze. It was a residential building that led to the Happy Territory Club. Why is it suddenly on fire? It seems that no one came out. I don't know if they're burned to death. The residents were whispering at this time. At this time, at the fire, in addition to the members of the disaster management team, there were two men wearing black robes and half masks. The badges on the two men's chests were the badges of the military police. Riaz lowered his head in the crowd and was very quiet, afraid that he would attract the attention of the two military police members. He remembered that Mr. Levis also mentioned about the military police. Your father is guilty of treason. Do you know that because of you, I may have been targeted by the military police? Along the way, Levis's words kept echoing in Riaz's mind. Is the fire in the residential building because of the military police? That Mr. Levis, that fierce-looking 19, and those people in the club, in this fire, are they already? Riaz had never felt so scared before. He kept his head down and ran desperately. As he ran, Riaz suddenly bumped into something and fell to the ground. Son, are you okay? Why are you still running around outside, so late at night? It was a worker who was in charge of cleaning the streets at night. The worker saw Riaz's panicked appearance and couldn't help but reach out and wanted to pull him up. Riaz, on the other hand, was a little frightened. When he thought of the two military police officers whose eyes were as terrifying as the siren clans, even in the dark of the night, he immediately screamed in fear. He lowered his head and knocked away the cleaning worker. Then he ran away again, ignoring the other party's shouts behind him. He ran all the way with his head down again and unknowingly ran to his home. It was not the house he moved out of alone, but the house he lived in with his parents after he was born. Riaz quickly opened the door and ran into the house. After closing the door, he sat at the entrance and gasped for air, trying to calm his rapidly beating heart. After a while, Riaz calmed down. He listened to the outside of the street, but it was quiet outside. Riaz gradually breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, there was no one in the house except him. Ever since his father was sent to prison and he moved out, his mother was the only one living here. But in fact, as the mother of a weaver in Underwater City, she spent most of her time in the military camp and rarely went home. Riaz turned on the light, walked to the living room, and looked around. His mother had not come back for at least a week. He opened the image recording bottle in the living room. His mother did leave him a message. The small bottle began to emit a conical light, and his mother's figure appeared in the light. I haven't seen you for a long time, Riaz. How have you been? The management of the camp has been a little strict recently, so it is not convenient for Mother to go out. Don't worry about your father. My mother will think of a way. You just need to take care of yourself. It stopped here. It was his mother's smiling face. Riaz looked at it and couldn't help but feel a little sour in his nose. After staying at home for a while, he remembered that the flying serpent for the competition had yet to be assembled. Thus, he could only close the door and return to his house. This time, Riaz did not walk close to the house that Mr. Wolf had brought him to. Instead, he took a long detour to return to his apartment. This was the most exciting and terrifying night that Riaz had ever experienced in his life. Even when he sneaked out of Underwater City to collect ores and ran into the Siren Tribe, it was not as terrifying as this night. The light in front of his apartment was still on. Riaz stood in front of his apartment and looked at the light in front of his apartment. He could not help but become distracted. After a while, he gently pushed open the door and walked into his apartment. This was clearly his apartment. That big brother and big sister should have already gone to sleep. After all, it was already so late. Riaz shook his head and did not enter the living room. Instead, he went to the workshop beside him. He still decided to participate in the all-star competition. He turned on the light in the workshop. Riaz saw the food on the table that was kept in a thermos. It was steaming hot. Riaz suddenly felt like crying. He fell to the ground. Only now did the youngster know fear. Or perhaps, fear had only just arrived. Chapter 1673. In the morning, Riaz turned on a magical shadow in the living room early in the morning, intending to see if there was any news about the house fire that happened on East 13th Street last night. But to Riaz's disappointment, He didn't see any reports from the morning news program until it ended. Did the officials deliberately hide this matter? But even if they couldn't report the Happy Domain clubhouse, many residents nearby knew that such a large house was on fire in the middle of the night. "Good morning, Riaz." Just as the young man was thinking, the greeting from a morning woke him up. Riaz quickly looked over and saw the big brother and big sister from yesterday walking down the stairs together. When Riaz saw Boss Luo and Miss Maid walking down together, he suddenly thought of something. There was only one room upstairs in his apartment. If the big brother and big sister spent the night upstairs last night, didn't they stay in the same room? Underwater City seemed to be a bit strict in the education of both genders. There was no similar network of human civilization on the surface world here. Most of the children in Underwater City received advice from Magical Shadow, books, and the teachings of their elders. In Riaz's knowledge, only young men and women who were legally registered with the officials could stay in the same room. Men and women who were not related to each other had to live separately before receiving a marriage license. Of course, they could meet each other. The ignorance of the opposite sex, under the influence of the young and gradually awakening hormones, suddenly took effect. Riaz suddenly didn't dare to look at the man and woman who slept in the same room last night. Then maybe they slept in my bed? On my bed. Riaz only felt that even his throat became dry at this time. He quickly picked up the glass of water and took a big gulp. But he still couldn't calm down, and he didn't dare to look directly at the two people in front of him. "Morning, morning, morning. You don't look very good," Boss Luo said casually. "It seems that you didn't have enough rest last night." "Riaz, did something happen?" "No." Riaz quickly shook his head and said with a laugh, "Nothing special." He had decided to treat what happened last night as a secret and rot in his heart. I made some breakfast," Riaz quickly said. "In the kitchen, the taste may be average, but thank you for leaving supper for me." I went to the studio. That's it." Riaz walked past Boss Luo and Miss Maid with a red face. Boss Luo suddenly said, "Wait, Riaz." Boss Luo smiled and said, "Are you still planning to participate in the Flying Eagle competition tomorrow?" "Yes, I will participate." Riaz nodded, his gaze still firm. Boss Luo asked, "Have you found someone to support you?" "No." Riaz shook his head and said helplessly, "I couldn't find one before, and now I can't even find one now. A good support is very popular. Even if it's just an apprentice, it's probably already reserved." "I see." Boss Luo nodded, then asked, "Then what do you think of the two of us?" "The two of us?" Riaz was stunned, then reacted and widened his eyes. But yesterday, didn't you reject me?" Boss Luo said casually, "Now we are interested, so we hope you can accept us and participate in this Underwater City's grand event. Consider it our initiative." Initiative request. Passive invitation. Riaz was a bit confused. He was in desperate need of people to support him, so the result was the same. What was the difference? "You don't want to?" No. Of course not." Riaz quickly waved his hand and shook his head, then showed a joyful expression. "Really? I can't be happier. Thank you." But what?" Riaz thought for a bit and said, Why do you suddenly want to help me? I may not get a place, so I may not be rewarded with contribution points. I really don't have extra contribution points on me now, so I can only return them after I work. I said it." Boss Luo smiled slightly and said, "We are interested and hope to participate in this Underwater City's grand event, so we need tickets to enter. Obviously, as your supporters, we will be able to obtain the best spectator seats." Riaz didn't believe such a reason at all, but he didn't think too much about it. He just secretly remembered this favor in his heart. "Then it's decided." Boss Luo waved his hand at this time and said, "But I really don't know about Flying Serpent. I can only help you. I'll have to trouble you with the assembly of Riaz's new Flying Serpent. Also, I'll take care of today's lunch and dinner for you. I also want to take a look at the Underwater City's market and supermarket. I also want to take a look at the ingredients in the deep sea." Miss Maid said with some pity. Riaz originally wanted to say that there was no need, but when he saw how excited this big brother was, he swallowed the words in his mouth. He followed this beautiful big sister back to his own studio in a daze. Well, to be precise, he was led to his own studio by this beautiful big sister. Led? Then, let's finish the assembly of the new flying serpent before this morning. Then it's time for debugging in the afternoon. Miss Maid said calmly at this time, since we were going to participate in the audition tomorrow, we should have more rest time at night. Riaz opened his mouth. He didn't blame this big sister. She didn't know the workload of assembling flying serpent. Riaz thought that it would be very lucky if he could successfully complete the assembly before tomorrow's audition. As for debugging, he could only rest on the spot? Impossible. But when Riaz saw the magic circuit board that Miss Maid suddenly took out, Riaz widened his eyes and said in disbelief, This is a brand new magic circuit board? When did you finish drawing it? Before I went to bed last night. Looking at this beautiful big sister with a confident smile on her face, Riaz suddenly felt that maybe he could have a good sleep tonight. Where should I sleep tonight? People's faces were filled with smiles of happiness and satisfaction. The pedestrians on the street liked to greet and bless each other. There was no wandering on the street or littering. The customers didn't bargain with the shop owners because the quality of the goods was good. They didn't talk about their wages. Things like contributing a salary, because even a job like a cleaner could afford to buy everything in the market. There were rich people who could buy more things. But there were no poor people. The social productivity was enough to raise the living standards of the people to the point where they could temporarily get rid of material dependence. There was no comparison. They could get better things through hard work. I'm sorry, I was in a hurry and bumped into you. It's okay, I didn't pay attention. People seem to be used to this kind of life. It was like a long river. You were upstream, and I was downstream. You and I would eventually flow into the sea. There was no difference. There was his majesty, but only his majesty. There were no nobles. The emperor was also a guardian. There were army soldiers and weapons, but there was no invasion. There was only defense. It was an ideal utopian world. At least, it seemed so on the surface. Except for the invisible sun, except for the huge sealed cliffs around the entire underwater city, except for the constitution and punishment that shouldn't exist in the utopian world. There was also the war against the sea demon tribe. Except for the promotional video of the flying tumbler competition that was being broadcasted on the huge dazzling screen in the commercial street. Carrying 2 bags of ingredients, Luaccio had been standing in front of the huge dazzling screen in the commercial street for a long time. Mom, I want to eat ice cream. Next to her, a boy pulled his mother to a mobile ice cream truck on the side of the road. Boss Luo looked over and felt a little strange. He had finished shopping in the market, and there were also supermarkets and other shops, but he found that there seemed to be no ice cream for sale in this underwater city. But there was this mobile ice cream truck. At this time, there was a long line in front of the ice cream truck. There was no queue cutting or quarreling. The customers took the things that the children had been looking forward to from the owner of the ice cream truck one by one and then left. It wasn't until the last ice cream was sold that the people in the queue behind silently dispersed. The owner of the ice cream truck looked like he was in his 20s. His skin was slightly tanned like the general public. His hair was fluffy and scattered, covering his eyebrows. The silver glasses covered his eyes. The owner of the ice cream truck found that there was still a young man standing in front of the stall. He was slightly surprised and said, "Today's batch is sold out. If you want it, you can only wait for next time." Boss Luo smiled and said, "I'm just curious. It seems that only you sell ice cream. The shops on the street can't even be seen. That's why my business here is so good." The young owner of the ice cream truck smiled and said, "Those shops have stipulated the items to be sold. If you want to sell new goods, you need to apply to the kingdom government. Because it's too troublesome, the shop owners are too lazy to sell them." Boss Luo asked curiously, "Even if it can increase the turnover, they don't care?" The owner of the ice cream truck smiled and said, "Even if they don't sell this kind of ice cream, their business is not bad. The shops in this underwater city are all profitable." Boss Luo pondered and then said, "Is it because they have stipulated the types of goods to be sold?" The young owner of the ice cream truck nodded and said, "Yes. For example, the shop in front only sells 3 kinds of fruits, while the shop next to it sells the other 3 kinds. The shops here are all like this, so there's always business coming to them. Similarly, because the goods in the shops are different, the quantity of stock is not equal, so there is no competition. Boss Luo shook his head. It doesn't sound like a shop. It sounds like something else. What is it? The young owner of the ice cream truck suddenly asked with interest. Boss Luo said, vending machine, the kingdom government's vending machine. That's different. The owner of the ice cream truck shook his head and said, vending machines have no thoughts, but the shop owners have their own thoughts. They will also think of ways to sell more of their goods, such as better after-sale service, and so on. Are they all positive methods? Boss Luo asked suddenly. Of course they are positive methods. The owner of the ice cream truck nodded and then asked in reply, do I have to use negative methods? Then what about you? Boss Luo asked again, why don't you open a store and expand the production so that more residents can buy ice cream? Expanding business is a positive method, isn't it? I'm different. The owner of the ice cream truck smiled and said, I don't come here often. I only make some ice cream to sell when I'm free. I have other work to do. Aren't part-time jobs not allowed in Underwater City? It's a hobby. The owner of the ice cream truck smiled and said, after deducting the cost of this turnover, it will all be turned over to the government. It's really a special hobby. Boss Luo nodded. I like to see the smiles on these children's faces. The owner of the ice cream truck packed the stall and said casually, children's smiles look better, but it's more of disappointment. There's still many children who didn't buy ice cream. Boss Luo said again. The owner of the ice cream truck said, if I want to satisfy all the children here, I need to spend all my time making ice cream, and I can't make it popular. But I will fix the sale here. Those who have bought ice cream once will automatically give it to those who haven't. The adults also hope that all the children can share the same happiness. This is a beautiful city, Boss Luo said with a smile. Yes. The owner of the ice cream truck nodded. Such a city is beautiful. Okay, I have to go. If you want to eat ice cream, you can walk around here more often. If I want to be here, I will be nearby. Boss Luo didn't ask him to stay. He watched the owner of the ice cream truck leave slowly. On the huge screen on the commercial street, the promotional clip of tomorrow's Flying Dog competition was still being broadcasted. An ice cream truck quietly drove into an empty alley and then into the garage of a residential house. The young ice cream truck owner walked out and walked into the house. He reached out and unbuttoned a button on his collar. Instantly, his slightly tanned skin turned white. The young ice cream truck owner took off his glasses and reached out to grab his hair. It was just a wig. After changing into a new set of clothes, the ice cream truck owner opened the door of the house. A young girl in a silver robe stood outside the door and said softly, Your Majesty, the military wants to see you. I met an interesting guy today, but he didn't look like someone from Underwater City. The eyes of the young girl in the silver robe changed. Chapter 1674. Where's Riaz? Boss Luo took out some food from the kitchen. It was now nighttime in the Underwater City. It was exactly 7 o'clock in the evening. There was no beautiful scenery like dusk. The sky above the city lights was dark blue. He fell asleep. Miss Maid quickly walked over to help. After finishing the final debugging, he fell asleep directly on the serpent. He was probably too tired. Then let's eat. Boss Luo smiled and took off his apron. Life was still very ritualistic. For example, Boss Luo's life. After dimming the lights, he took out a silver candlestick. After lighting the candle, Boss Luo pulled out the chair in front of the table for Miss Maid and invited her to sit. Dinner was a very suitable time for chatting. It could be about the day's experience, some thoughts, or the vision for the future. But the shop owner and Miss Maid did not have more vision for the future. Flammable ice? Boss Luo was listening to Miss Maid's views on magic energy technology. It's a technology that converts heat energy into kinetic energy. Miss Maid nodded and said, the Lemurians have achieved the technology of mining and storing this energy a long time ago. According to the information provided by Riaz, the ordinary civilian magic energy core is only a simple conversion of heat energy. But it's enough to supply energy as a living tool. Then there are the cores of some large tools. For example, the serpent is a more efficient combustion technology. I heard that there's a magic energy supply system under the entire underwater city that uses large magic energy cores. Boss Luo looked at the civilian magic energy core that Miss Maid gave him. This core's energy was used up. It would break with a light pinch. After the broken magic energy core, there was some blue-white powder left. Then, under the effect of the air, it would quickly vaporize and disappear. It felt that this gaseous state would not cause pollution to the environment. It was a completely clean energy source. Although the conditions for the formation of this energy are quite difficult, there are many in the deep sea. Miss Maid paused and said, "The population of the underwater city is about 9 million. Although the underwater city is huge, it is enough for the mineral reserves in the deep sea. The social form of this underwater city is quite interesting." Luaccio immediately talked about what he saw during the day when he was shopping. Mademoiselle May described it thus: a recyclable ecosystem in a sealed environment. This kind of man-made or even forced state requires a very sophisticated management organization. Miss Maid shook her head and said, "And there can't be any mistakes." But the mistake has already been made. Boss Luo smiled and waved his hand. A paper crane flew into his palm. It was the paper crane that Miss Maid sent out to inquire about information yesterday, and now it had flown back. 2 rays of light shot out from the heads of the paper cranes and turned into a screen in the air. They simply recorded some things, which was very different from Boss Luo's all-purpose infinitesimal TV. But Miss Maid did not have the ability to create a mini TV. Boss Luo has been banned recently. It is recommended to temporarily stop spending extravagantly. The intelligent source of the paper cranes began to release some fragments about what happened last night. If Riaz was here, he would definitely exclaim, because the fragments projected by the paper cranes were what he encountered in the happy territory last night. It seems that human desires are bred under the constraints of rules and laws. Miss Maid only took a few glances and already had an evaluation. The suppression of human nature will eventually lead to a rebound. It's not a rebound. Boss Luo shook his head and said, "I have read some of the history of the underwater city. I think the former Lemurians should have already tasted the bitter fruit brought by this suppression of human nature. It's better to let it out than to block it. The current underwater city will slightly give the residents some channels to vent. After venting, people can quickly return to their normal state. The underwater city is different from the human countries on the land, but this behavior is advocated by the underwater city kingdom government." Boss Luo said and called a new paper crane. This paper crane was a record of the flying serpent competition in the underwater city. It was hard to imagine that such a bloody competition event would appear in a place like the underwater city that always revealed rules and self-discipline and advocated friendship, kindness, and courtesy. The chaotic competition was stuffed on the stage, blood and limbs were wasted, but the audience was so enthusiastic. "What's this?" Miss Maid's eyes were fixed on the bloody competition venue, on a round ball about 3 meters in diameter. Boss Luo said, "I don't know yet, but it seems that this ball will appear in every competition. Maybe we will know tomorrow. Then I'll have to make some preparations too." Miss Maid smiled slightly, although I don't want to help Riaz win the championship. After all, it is the first flying serpent that I personally built. If I see other flying serpents running in front of it, I will feel very uncomfortable. It was probably her perfectionism at work, because this was not a business. Perhaps for Miss Maid, it was just a game, just like the chess game she played with the boss in the afternoon, somewhere in the imperial palace of the underwater city. This place was like a command room. Dozens of men and women wearing helmets and special uniforms were sitting on their own seats. Their hands were inserted into a basketball-sized ball. At this moment, a girl in a silver robe was sitting on the seat of honor. "Haven't you found him yet?" Girl Lyoga asked indifferently. "Yes, Master Lyoga." A man in the seat directly below took off his helmet, looking up and saying helplessly, "We searched all the records of the commercial street in the East 13 district today, but we didn't find the person mentioned by His Majesty. Maybe His Majesty remembered wrongly?" The girl didn't speak. She just threw out a cup, The cup fell vertically on the man's forehead, and the bright red juice immediately slid down the man's cheek. "Sorry, Master Lyoga. I'll check again carefully." The man sat down again in a panic, putting on his helmet again. At this moment, a woman in a row on the other side suddenly looked up and said quickly, "Master Lyoga, I found something here. Surveillance target number 3 is currently out of the safe zone." As she spoke, the woman turned her helmet, and the eye patch immediately shot a huge projection at the black wall in front. These monkeys on the ground are really restless." Girl Yoga smiled faintly and then waved her hand. "Keep watching. As long as it's not too out of line, just pretend that you didn't find anything." The woman in charge of surveillance said, but the direction that target number 3 is moving in seems to be the first place where the magical energy researchers are. They're still His Majesty's guests." Girl Yoga said indifferently, "Since they're guests, they can visit if they want. But it's only limited to visiting, understand?" "Understood." The woman quickly sat down again. At this moment, another man stood up and said quickly, "Master Lyoga, we found traces of Levis." Girl Yoga directly ordered, "Tell the military police to send troops to capture him." "All right, continue to search for the person that His Majesty is looking for. Leave this to the adjutant to command." As she spoke, Girl Yoga directly pushed open the door of this huge dark room, and after passing through many doors and passageways, she walked out of a square in the palace. From here, she could see the study of the underwater city's emperor, Louis XXXIX. The light in the study was still on. In the afternoon, the people from the military came. Judging from the situation, they had not left yet. They were in the study with His Majesty the Emperor, discussing the matter of sending troops to attack the Sea Demon tribe. Recently, the Sea Demon tribe had become more active. His Majesty the Emperor had decided to properly remind these creatures that had completely become slaves of the sea, who is the master of the deep sea. Girl Yoga slowly walked towards the direction of the palace's study. At this moment, she suddenly looked up as if she had sensed something and looked at a certain position in the lower section of the White Tower. On the platform there, Miss Cheen, dressed in white, was overlooking the night view of the underwater city. "A bird in a cage." Girl Yoga laughed softly. "You can't fly out of this underwater city." Above the White Tower, Miss Cheen, who was on the platform, seemed to have sensed a certain gaze from below. She didn't care and focused on searching for the faint consciousness that Green Lotus Sword's song transmitted to her. Although her cultivation had been suppressed, the technique of the Inata sect was quite amazing. Even though her power was gone, there was still a little bit of her intuition left. With this little bit of intuition, she could roughly sense Green Lotus Sword Song's current location. It was near the venue of the All-Star Flying Pyramid competition that was going to be held tomorrow. If I get closer to Green Lotus Sword Song, it seems like I can trigger its power. As long as I can trigger a strand of Green Lotus Sword Song's sword energy, it would be enough for her to break the shackles on her feet and release the restriction that suppressed her cultivation. Tomorrow, Underwater City, outside the palace, in the first academy of the Magic Research Institute under the royal government. At this moment, a few figures were moving slowly against the shadows on the wall. Among these few figures, one of them was Captain Justin, who was heading to the underwater city to look for support from the underwater city's emperor. Captain Justin brought his subordinates and wandered around the periphery of Astral 1. After that, he immediately brought his subordinates back to the hotel that Louis XXXIX used to receive them. Just as he returned to the hotel room, Captain Justin quickly asked, "How was it?" One of the subordinates smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have completely mapped out the passageway of Astral 1. At this moment, the subordinate quickly took out a pen and paper and began to draw something on the paper. Not long after, the internal structure of Astral 1 was roughly mapped out. They would never have thought that we have people with detection abilities. Another subordinate laughed and said, "Now, Astral 1 is no longer secret to us." This time, the captain's request for help was just a smokescreen. His real intention was to get the magic technology of the underwater city. "Ha! The eyes of the subordinate who was drawing the map lit up at this moment. Tomorrow, the underwater city will hold a grand competition. At that time, everyone will be attracted to it. It will be a good opportunity for us to make our move. After we snatch the technology and equipment of Astral 1, we will immediately set sail on the Sapphire. As long as we return to the sea, these soldiers of the underwater city will not be a problem. That's right. The technology of the underwater city is indeed terrifying, and the magic energy warriors are even more powerful. But who would have thought that these people of the underwater city have a fatal weakness? This is destined to make them unable to become the overlord of the land. This kind of magic energy technology should be provided to us, the Black Order. Captain Justin did not say anything and just let his subordinates plan for tomorrow's action. Tomorrow, bang, bang, bang. The sky of the underwater city was completely bright. The venue of the All-Star Flying Pyramid competition was located in the central district of the underwater city. This place was less than 7 kilometers away from the palace. Colorful air bombs were shot into the sky one by one and then exploded, followed by ribbons and colorful pieces of paper. People enthusiastically poured into the competition venue. Although the venue was huge, it could not accommodate the 9 million people of the underwater city. Most of the people could only stand outside and watch the live broadcast of the magic energy dazzle. At this time, the streets of the central district had become so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Today, in addition to the opening ceremony of the grand competition, seemed to be a special day, a day that allowed the residents of the underwater city to release some of the hidden things in their bodies to their heart's content. Look, 19. Look carefully, understand, and watch carefully. At the window of a 3-story house facing the street, Levis, who was wearing a black cloak, pointed at the crowded crowd outside the window and said, "Look, these guys look ugly at this time. What's the difference between them and the guests of my happy domain?" 19 in the room rolled his eyes and lowered his head to focus on maintaining the artificial eye that he took out from his eye socket. At this time, the door of the room suddenly opened, and a man and a woman wearing a black cloak walked in. After the man took off his hat, he said directly, "Levis, I heard that you were in trouble last night." Levis immediately complained. "I was chased by the people of the 3rd Department of the Military Police for a whole night. Do you know that my skin has become much worse?" Long Gang? The man named Long Gang just pretended that he did not hear it and looked directly at 19. 19 just said casually, "It doesn't affect." Long Gang nodded. "That's good. After we rescue them, we will immediately evacuate and then go to the fallen trench. All right, let's go and prepare." As he said that, Long Gang looked at his companion who had come with him. "Kaya, don't worry. We will definitely help you rescue your husband." The woman did not say anything and only nodded. Then, the woman named Kaya suddenly looked at Levis and said softly, "I owe you a favor, Levis." "This is a huge favor." Levis smiled casually. "My business is completely ruined. I owe you a life." "That's more like it." Levis smiled and then waved his hand to open the window. "I actually quite like this grand party. 19, it's time to make a big scene." Riaz felt that the beginning of the day was very smooth. He woke up early and had a vigorous breakfast. Then, he did not run into any traffic on the way and directly arrived outside the competition venue to undergo the final inspection before entering the venue. There was still a lot of time. Riaz, is this the flying serpent that you're participating in today's competition? It doesn't look like much. One look, and you can tell that it's a cheap item, the kind that can't go far." At this moment, a young man who was about the same age as Riaz was slowly walking over. Behind this young man, a group of supporters were pushing a huge flying serpent. Before the start of the competition, the contestants were used to covering their flying serpent with a white cloth to prevent others from seeing some of the data of the flying serpent. However, this young man was different. Not only was his flying serpent huge, it was even ferocious like a giant beast, and it was completely golden in color. Everyone looked at him. "Who is this?" Miss Maid asked calmly. Riaz smiled bitterly. "He's called Cord Dorkin. He's my classmate. His family is in the business of recharging magic energy cores, so his contribution points. He has quite a lot. He's not like this normally, but I don't know what he did today. He suddenly became so high profile. Huh. Miss Maid laughed. Hashtag PS1. Don't complain about Cord Dorkin's name. A certain book friend who doesn't want to reveal his name strongly requested it, you know. Equals PS2. Caught a bad cold for a few days. I'll be back tomorrow. That's all. Chapter 1675. Compared to the flying serpent of an average player, the difference between the flying serpent of a rich player and the flying serpent was indeed like the difference between a lion and a rabbit. The armor that was armed to the teeth, especially the front part of the armor that was like a gigantic beast, was already very difficult to describe its offensive capabilities. The flying tumbler competition did not forbid attacking each other. The violence in the competition was where the passion of the audience came from. But Riaz had some confidence in the flying tumbler that he assembled with his big sister yesterday. When he was testing it yesterday afternoon, he was very clear about the new flying tumbler, Esteta. Even though he was shocked by the flying tumbler that he had bought yesterday, he was not afraid. Riaz, you expose your flying tumbler too quickly. Riaz did not care about Riaz's provocative behavior. What's wrong with you today? You're not usually so flamboyant. This Riaz student not only competed with a shiny, flying tumbler, even his clothes were dressed up. From head to toe, he exuded a rich aura. Even his shoes were inlaid with a lot of gems. Even his eyes seemed to reveal the luster of gems. No, Riaz, this is the original me. You don't understand the difference between us at all. How can my golden beast be compared to a piece of trash like you that was made with cheap stuff? Riaz cracked open his teeth. Under the light, even his teeth shone with a shiny luster. Give up this competition, Riaz, come and help me. I've already left you the position of the best support. As long as you nod, no matter what parts or materials you want, I can satisfy you. Your dream is to become an excellent flying tumbler maintenance and modification engineer, right? No, Riaz. Riaz shook his head. I will get what I want through my own efforts. You rejected me again. Riaz coldly snorted, then directly poked Riaz's forehead and said coldly, Wait, during the competition, I will directly crush your flying tumbler. I will let you know what the power of wealth is. As long as you come to my side, you will be able to display all your talents. Then, let's decide the winner on the field. Riaz clenched his fist lightly, his face full of fighting spirit. Duo Jean snorted coldly, waved his hand, and ordered his people to push his huge flying golden giant beast away. The crowd gradually dispersed. Riaz returned to Boss Luo, and Miss Maid's sighed apologetically. About that, spending money means no harm. He's not like that usually. Are you two very good friends? Boss Luo asked with a smile. Riaz said subconsciously, We grew up together. We've known each other since we were kids. We've always been classmates. Recently, I've been on leave and haven't been back to school. In the beginning, he spent a lot of money hoping that I could join his team. Boss Luo said, I think this guy's team is quite strong. If you join his team, you might be able to get a better ranking. Don't you want to earn more contribution points? Riaz shook his head and said, It's different. If I don't participate as a player, I can't get special contribution points. I want my father and mother to meet, so I can only use special contribution points. It's hard to exchange between normal contribution points and special contribution points. And what? Riaz whispered, and I don't want spending money to give me his main competitor identity. His dream is to become a professional flying serpent player. He'll help you? Riaz nodded. He's not like that usually. Boss Luo said non-committally, Today's underwater city might not be like usual. Riaz looked at Boss Luo in confusion. Not like usual? Then what is it like? Riaz subconsciously looked around. Indeed, it was not like usual. Today was really a lively day. It's our turn. Miss Maid suddenly said, Riaz, do your best. Oh, okay. Riaz nodded subconsciously, but he didn't know why he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Why did this big sister smile give him a creepy feeling? Outside the palace, in a luxurious hotel under the name of the royal family. There were guards assigned by the royal government here. As a link between the royal government and the world on land, Captain Justin and the others shouldn't be exposed to the public. The guards' purpose was to prevent some random people from accidentally discovering Captain Justin and the others. As for surveillance, it was up to different people. But no matter what, the guards of the royal government had fallen to the ground one after another. The door of the innermost room in the hotel slowly opened, and Captain Justin walked out expressionlessly. 2 guards of the royal government had also fallen outside the door. Sir Justin, the guards here have been taken care of. They won't wake up in less than half a day. A few subordinates hurried back at this moment. Then let's go. Captain Justin nodded. The Emperor of Underwater City should be at the competition site. Okay. The subordinates quickly said, Captain, Sapphire is also ready to support us at any time. Let's go. Captain Justin directly ordered in a deep voice. On the streets, there were pedestrians cheering for the upcoming flying tumbler competition. It was like a grand carnival, and people would wear their favorite clothes. Strange clothes. In such an environment, Long Gang, who was wearing a black robe and had his head covered, didn't stand out. The same was true for the woman beside Long Gang. Kaya, I heard that your child is also participating in the flying tumbler competition this time. Long Gang suddenly asked in a low voice. The woman was silent, but she suddenly looked up at the dazzling screen on the road. It was broadcasting the current situation of the venue. She seemed to be looking for something, but clearly couldn't find it. Or, the current time wasn't enough for her to stay too long. Don't expose yourself in this operation. Long Gang suddenly said in a low voice. We can't let people know that the goal of this operation is to get Mr. Osher. Once you're exposed, your child will be in danger too. I know, the woman quickly said. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I'll be quiet. Long Gang didn't say anything, but nodded silently. Then, he clenched his fist and lightly covered his chest. Then, he lowered his body and disappeared into the crowd. It was the same for the woman. Quiet. The gendarmerie of the kingdom's government that represented the law entered one after another, and then quickly stood in 2 rows. In the passage, the Emperor of the Underwater City, Louis XXXIX, slowly walked over. Behind the Emperor was the young girl in a silver robe, Lyoga, and a woman in white with a cold expression. At the end of the passage, there was a special stand in the venue of the flying tumbler competition, the special seat for the Emperor. It was like a bridgehead, enough to overlook the entire venue. After a while, the Emperor, Lyoga, and Miss Cheen had entered the special seat. The gendarmerie didn't enter. They just guarded in front of the door or below the stand. There were already maids waiting in the room. At this time, the chairs were already set. Louis XXXIX directly sat in the middle chair, while Lyoga and Miss Cheen sat on both sides. How do you feel? His Majesty looked at Miss Cheen and said with a smile, This is the biggest event in the Underwater City. From today onwards, all the people in the Underwater City will party to their heart's content. Is this considered charity? Miss Cheen said indifferently. It's like a prisoner who has been in prison for a long time and now has a chance to go out and get some fresh air. His Majesty just laughed it off. Beside him, Lyoga didn't have any expression. Suddenly, the communicator that Lyoga had attached to her ear suddenly vibrated. She nodded and then moved to the Emperor's side, whispering something softly. Just catch them. His Majesty listened and casually ordered, Don't alarm this side. Lyoga nodded and then left her seat and left the room. Seeing this, Miss Cheen said coldly, Your maid is actually not worried to leave me here alone with you. Louis XXXIX showed a confident smile on his face. She will not worry, because I am the most powerful magic-powered warrior in this underwater city. You are very arrogant. Miss Cheen said, I'm just confident. Louis XXXIX shook his head and said, If I am not confident, I can't be the emperor of this underwater city. I am now the emperor of this underwater city. If I'm not confident, I can't have a foothold. A timid and cowardly emperor will not be needed. Miss Cheen didn't want to argue with this emperor about these issues. She suddenly raised her hand and pointed outside. That round ball, what is that thing? She was talking about a huge round ball that was suspended above the competition venue. It was shrouded in darkness, giving her an ominous feeling. It is some kind of purification device. Lewis XXXIX said slowly, "We use it to purify some of the bad things in the bodies of the underwater city's residents. There are also some other uses." "What uses?" Miss Cheen frowned. His Majesty said with a smile, "After you become my Empress, I will share this secret with you. I am looking forward to the moment when you give birth to an outstanding descendant for me." "I am very curious." Miss Cheen said, "Why did the two empresses before you die?" "Logically speaking, with the medical technology in this place, there shouldn't be any incurable diseases." His Majesty said, "Don't worry, they were not murdered. I will tell you why they left me. After she became the Empress." This had always been the excuse Lewis XXXIX used to deal with Miss Cheen, as if she could directly own half of the underwater city after she became the Empress. "This position is not good." Miss Cheen suddenly stood up. "I want to go to the seat below." His Majesty looked in the direction Miss Cheen was pointing at and found a torch platform. He shook his head and said, "The line of sight here is the best. You will see it clearly." His Majesty then waved his hand. A large number of dazzling light screens appeared in front of him, projecting the entire venue without any blind spots. At the same time, handcuffs suddenly popped out from Miss Cheen's seat and fixed her on the seat. Lewis XXXIX left his seat and walked to Miss Cheen, suddenly kneeling down on one knee. "As long as you are here, you can get everything." His Majesty lowered his head and gently kissed the back of Miss Cheen's hand. "My future Empress." Miss Cheen closed her eyes and didn't say anything. His Majesty slightly moved and stood up. Raising his shawl, he walked out of the stand and appeared in front of the audience. His Majesty's voice spread over the entire venue through the sound expansion technology. "People of the underwater city, my people, can't you hold back the passion in your heart?" "Your Majesty." Wave after wave of cries rang out in an instant, drowning out all other unnecessary sounds. Behind the Emperor, Miss Cheen slowly opened her eyes. A trace of worry flashed through her eyes. Her spirit sense didn't become sharper after leaving the Imperial Palace. In fact, her senses towards the Green Lotus Sword Song had become blurry. It seemed that something was suppressing the feeling of her spiritual mind. It was a huge black ball floating in the sky above the venue. It seemed to be rotating slowly, and then a crack appeared in the middle. Looking at it now, it actually looked like a huge eye. Miss Cheen didn't want to give up today's opportunity to go out without any gains. Her eyes quickly swept over the dazzling light screens in front of her, looking for some inspiration. Suddenly, Miss Cheen's eyes stopped on one of the light screens. Then her pupils started to fluctuate. Why is he here? At this moment, as if he had sensed Miss Cheen's gaze, the person on the light screen suddenly raised his head, as if he had seen through the light screen. "It's him, the owner of the shop." Miss Cheen. Cheen Shiyu's calm state of mind couldn't help but waver at this moment. Perhaps she didn't even need to look for Green Lotus Sword Song. The chance to escape had come quietly. Cheen Shiyu slightly opened her white teeth, but the person on the light screen turned around, as if he hadn't found anything. Cheen Shiyu couldn't help opening her mouth. "So angry. I didn't participate in a ranking match before, so I can only be the last one in the competition." At this moment, Riaz came back with a bit of annoyance, holding a document he had just received from the venue. His expression didn't look optimistic. But Boss Luo and Miss Servant Girl didn't seem to care too much. Instead, they were discussing something. Suddenly, "I have a feeling that the world is very small," Boss Luo said. "This Miss Cheen doesn't seem to be in a good situation," Miss Servant Girl said indifferently. "This is really an interesting encounter. A female cultivator from the land of Kelowna was trapped in the underwater city and was chosen as a concubine by the Emperor of the underwater city. The plot suddenly started in Unrequited Love Valley." Chapter 1676. In the Emperor's special seat. Cheen Shiyu had concentrated all her energy, but she didn't get any response for a long time. This even made this female cultivator, who had transformed from a fox demon into a human and then rushed to the top of Kelowna's Taoist world as a human, have some kind of illusion. What she saw was just a person who looked like her, not the owner of the shop. It was fine if there was a person who looked like her, but what was going on with the maid next to her? Logically speaking, no matter what the customer asked for, even if it was just a similar idea, they should show up. But Qin Shiyu felt that something seemed to be isolating her. It wasn't the mysterious round ball above the venue, but the other party unilaterally closed some kind of contact channel. What's going on? Is it judging that my current situation is not enough to carry out the transaction? Qin Shiyu couldn't help but fall into contemplation. She didn't know anything, and this was the first time she contacted a customer of the shop. She even made some miraculous transactions. For example, she got rid of her fox demon body and became a human. A real human, not the kind that cultivated into a human form. My current request is obviously to get away. But according to the current situation, the chance for me to get away is infinitely close to zero. This made Qin Shiyu have to re-examine the current situation. Qin Shiyu couldn't help but blame the shop owner for ignoring her. In the other party's perception, she was now in a situation where she basically couldn't get away without the intervention of external forces. Qin Shiyu, who had a transaction record, had some understanding of the shop's means of fulfilling wishes. As long as she was willing to spend time and effort to accomplish it, and could accomplish it, the shop usually wouldn't charge a high price. Only those wishes that were beyond her ability would be charged a high price. The idea in her mind gradually became clear, but she had never thought of one thing. The shop owner might have the ability to actively close the transaction trigger mechanism. Lewis. Right at this moment, amidst the complicated fog, Qin Shiyu suddenly looked at the emperor of the undersea city as if she had the good fortune to do so. You rarely take the initiative to call my name. The emperor now looked at this powerful woman of the human clan who was fished out from the deep sea with surprise. This woman was indeed powerful. Even though she was seriously injured when she was brought back, her vitality magnetic field was so strong that even the undersea city emperor could not help but be shocked. This woman represented a different evolutionary direction for the human race. At the same time, the emperor of the underwater city was indeed obsessed with her appearance, especially her cold temperament. I will fall in love with someone. Qin Shiyu looked at the emperor expressionlessly. When Louis XXXIX heard this, he could not help but frown. I will dedicate my heart to the person who wins the championship in this competition. Qin Shiyu slowly said, I will fall in love with the champion this time, but at the same time, I will become your queen. Only my body will belong to you. You are provoking me. Louis XXXIX shook his head. He had no intention of getting angry. You know, I have plenty of ways to make your plan fail. But you are very confident. Qin Shiyu chuckled. This undersea city is yours. Everything here is yours. They're like dolls in your hands. Everything is going according to your will. But unfortunately, I have never been a member of the undersea city. Your will cannot conquer my heart. I have been free since the beginning. What are you trying to say? The emperor said indifferently. Qin Shiyu said with a smile, Go to this arena. I have said that I will dedicate my heart to the champion of this competition, and it can be you. I have already been the champion. I don't need to participate in this competition to prove myself. Louis XXXIX shook his head. You're afraid, Louis. Qin Shiyu said softly. Even if you have been the champion, even if you're the emperor of the undersea city, you will still be afraid. Afraid that you will fail in this competition. Afraid that there will be someone who can defeat you in this competition. You are afraid that as the emperor, you will no longer be invincible. The emperor smiled, saying playfully, My future queen, why do I have to go to this competition? You know, you can't resist me at all. Because your pride doesn't allow me, your future queen, to have a trace of disobedience in my heart. Qin Shiyu smiled faintly. Go for me. Become the champion of this competition. Let me see your invincibility as the emperor of the undersea city. The emperor stared at Qin Shiyu without saying a word. After a long while, he smiled. I will do as you wish. Louis XXXIX suddenly took off his shawl. His face was full of a spirit that could look down on the whole world. He said loudly, I will participate in this competition. After saying that, the emperor directly walked out of the stands. He actually jumped down from the stands. I will participate in this competition. The emperor's voice resounded throughout the entire field, both inside and outside the field. In a split second, the entire undersea city fell into silence. However, after the huge silence, there was a call that sounded like a volcanic eruption. The announcement of the emperor's participation in the competition pushed the people's emotions to the peak. The deafening sound waves seemed to even shake the air. Go, Louis. Qin Shiyu looked at the back of the emperor silently. Soon after, she looked for something on the screen again. That was just a brief glimpse on the screen, and now it had disappeared without a trace. Qin Shiyu couldn't help lowering her head and muttering to herself, I hope you're here to help someone win. She wasn't sure, but it allowed her to take a gamble. Anyway, her current situation couldn't be worse. What's going on? Why did the emperor suddenly participate in the competition? What a capricious emperor. Outside the competition venue, in the carriage of a special vehicle used for interviews. The staff in charge of the live broadcast of the TV station had already fallen down. Instead, there were two men who had quietly intruded. Levis and 19. At this time, Levis was looking at the screen. Almost all the cameras were focused on the figure of the emperor. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Although that's true, this emperor is really, no matter how many times I see him, I'm still in the mood to worship him. 19, look, his muscles, his lines, his face. TSK. I'm just concerned if the emperor's sudden participation will affect our plan. Levis shook his head. Or rather, it's more beneficial for us? Think about it. Louis XXXIX suddenly participates in the competition. This isn't an ordinary competition, but a flying to a competition where injuries and even death are unavoidable. I think the officials of the kingdom's government must be scared out of their wits, right? I hope so. 19 nodded. Levis sneered at this moment, then reached into his chest and took out a necklace. A palm-sized crystal chip was tied to the necklace. Levis put his hands on the operation table of the interview vehicle, suddenly taking out a similar crystal chip from the table. Then he inserted his own crystal chip. The good show is about to start. Let's wait for Boss Long Gang. I didn't expect the Emperor to participate. The heavens are really helping me. Outside the Magic Research Institute, Captain Justin and his team were overjoyed after receiving the news through the live broadcast of Magic Ability, Dazzling Shadow. This competition was a day of celebration for the whole city, and all the posts were given a precious holiday. Even an important place like the Magic Research Institute was only left with guards at this time. In fact, many of the guards had gathered together to watch the competition. Thus, with the help of a subordinate with perceptive abilities, Captain Justin and his team did not even spend too much energy to successfully invade a secret research lab in Astral One. The most important thing is the information on magic ability technology. Next is the finished equipment and magic ability core. Imagine yourself as a robber entering the city. This place has the capital to make a comeback. Under the command of Captain Justin, his subordinates were like locusts passing through in an instant. But at this moment, the door of the Research Institute suddenly closed. What followed was a piercing alarm sound. What's going on? Have we been discovered? No, we didn't alert the guards on our way here. Don't panic. Activate the backup plan. Captain Justin calmly gave the order at this time. Don't forget that we have weapons in our hands that could defeat these soldiers of the underwater city. As long as these people of the underwater city have that weakness, we have the capital to escape no matter how many there are. With that, a subordinate hurriedly walked to the wall of the Research Institute and put his hands on the wall. Soon, the wall melted directly, revealing a large hole big enough for a person to pass through. The subordinate quickly turned around and said, "Captain, this way. I'll open the way in front. The walls of this path can't trap me." Just as he spoke, a small team of 8 people appeared in front of the broken hole. These were obviously not the guards of Astral One itself, but the military police of the royal government. It seems that our actions have long been in the eyes of His Majesty the Emperor. Captain Justin shook his head and looked at this line of military police. He said expressionlessly, "The military police only appeared after we took action. His Majesty the Emperor is really confident." A person walked out and said in a deep voice, "Mr. Justin, His Majesty has instructed that as long as you return to the hotel now, His Majesty can pretend that this incident never happened. His Majesty is still sincere in cooperating with you. Please go back." At this point, I don't think that your Emperor can still sincerely cooperate with me. Captain Justin shook his head. "If it were me, I wouldn't. However, if you want to keep me here, you have to see if you have the ability to do so." With that said, one of Captain Justin's subordinates suddenly rushed out. This subordinate was holding something like a flashlight in his hand at this time. He opened it, and in an instant, blue-purple light shot out directly. This is... The members of the military police frowned at this time. After knowing that their skin came into contact with the blue-purple light, they instantly showed a horrified expression. Not good, but in an instant, a lot of smoke came out of the bodies of these military police members. Their skin seemed to be burned and turned red all of a sudden and even festered. 8 members of the military police fell to the ground at this time and wailed in pain. Captain Justin walked past expressionlessly. He walked past a member of the military police who was in pain and kicked him away. No matter how advanced your technology is, how powerful your weapons are. However, as long as you are exposed to ultraviolet rays, you will be burned to death. You are destined to never become the masters of the land. Captain, a large number of military police came in. The subordinate hurried forward at this time. Captain Justin nodded and waved his hand. "Let's go." They had ultraviolet weapons on hand that could deal with the people of Heidi City. But for so many years, how could the people of Heidi City not protect their own weaknesses? In this underwater city, there were dozens of types of equipment that could isolate the damage of ultraviolet weapons. At present, the 8 members of the military police who were killed by ultraviolet weapons only relied on the fact that they were in the underwater city and did not wear the isolation equipment. When a group of demonic energy warriors from the underwater city appeared wearing isolation equipment, the manpower that Captain Justin brought at this time was obviously not enough to fill the gap between the opponent's teeth. Sapphire is close to the deep-sea trench. Very good. Captain Justin nodded. Not good. Sapphire has lost contact with us. But in just a moment, the subordinate said in horror. What? Captain Justin's eyes suddenly widened. Emperor, 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 Emperor. The deafening voices in the venue showed no signs of stopping. Everyone's eyes were focused on the Emperor, who was slowly putting on his battle suit. Even the Flying Serpent, players who were about to compete, were no exception. Even Riaz was looking excitedly at Louis XXXIX, the Emperor, on the huge screen. He was even cheering along with the crowd. In the preparation area, Boss Luo looked at Riaz and asked with a smile, "You seem to admire this Emperor a lot." "Of course," Riaz said excitedly. "His Majesty was once the champion of the All-Star game, and he used the ordinary Flying Serpent. At that time, there was no so-called cheating or giving way. His Majesty concealed his identity and won the matches one by one. He's a legend. Oh my God, I can actually compete with His Majesty in the same field. I'm not dreaming. That's amazing," Boss Luo said with a smile. At this moment, Miss Maid suddenly walked over and stuffed a 3-finger-wide chip into Riaz's hands. "What's this?" Riaz asked in surprise. Miss Maid smiled and said, "This is the key. When the core temperature of Flying Serpent rises to the 5th degree, insert it into the socket under the control panel. There will be a surprise." Riaz blinked his eyes. The socket under the control panel? What's going on? When he was debugging yesterday afternoon, he didn't find any socket on the control panel. Hashtag, 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 hashtag.